The day my husband handed me divorce papers on our 7th anniversary, he had no idea he'd just signed his own death warrant. I'm Lena Carter, or at least that's who I pretended to be for 7 years. The dutiful wife, the quiet woman who cooked dinner and smiled through his cruelty. But before I became Mrs. Cole, I was someone else entirely, someone dangerous, someone promised to a man who owns half this city's underworld. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I want to see how far my truth travels. The rain started exactly at midnight. I remember because I was sitting at our dining table staring at the cake I'd spent all afternoon baking. Chocolate with raspberry filling. Adrien's favorite, back when he still had favorites that included me. 7 candles arranged in a circle, unlit. The good china set for 2. A bottle of wine I'd saved for 3 years, waiting for an anniversary that felt worth celebrating. The front door opened at 12:47 a.m. I didn't check my phone. I didn't need to. I'd memorized the pattern of his late arrivals the way some women memorize prayers. Tuesday and Thursday, 11 p.m. Fridays, 1 a.m. Saturdays, he sometimes didn't come home at all. Adrien walked into the dining room and stopped. His tie was loosened, his collar unbuttoned. There was lipstick on his jaw, a shade I'd never owned. He looked at the table, at me, at the cake with its unlit candles, and something flickered across his face. Not guilt, annoyance. Jesus, Lena, what is this? I folded my hands in my lap. It's our anniversary. So you thought ambushing me with, what, a guilt trip? Some pathetic little cake? He laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. Do you have any idea what kind of day I've had? Tell me. What? Tell me about your day. I kept my voice level. 7 years of practice had taught me how to swallow everything sharp before it reached my tongue. I'd like to hear about it. He stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. Then he walked past the table to the bar cart, poured himself 3 fingers of scotch, and drank half of it in one swallow. The Westbrook contract fell through. Richardson's been breathing down my neck about the quarterly projections. I spent 4 hours in a conference room with people who think they're smarter than me, picking apart every decision I've made in the last 6 months. He drained the glass. That's my day, Lena. That's every day. While you sit here in this house playing housewife like it's still 1955. I'd heard variations of this speech before. The subtext was always the same. You don't understand my world, you're not enough for it. I made dinner, I said quietly. It's in the oven, still warm. I ate already. Where? His eyes narrowed. What? Where did you eat? Carlisle's, the new place downtown. He said it like a challenge, daring me to push further. Table for 6, business dinner. The lie sat between us like a third person at the table. I could see it in the way his jaw tightened, the slight flush creeping up his neck. Business dinners didn't leave lipstick stains, but I'd learned long ago that calling him on his lies only made things worse. I see, I said. Do you? He poured another drink. Do you actually see anything beyond these walls, Lena? Do you have any concept of what I'm building out there? The kind of people I'm dealing with? I know you work hard. Work hard. He laughed again, sharper this time. I'm not working hard. I'm clawing my way up a ladder where every rung is made of people trying to kick me back down. I'm fighting every single day to make something of myself, to be someone who matters. And I come home to this. He gestured vaguely at the dining room, at me, at the life we'd built together. To you, sitting here, waiting like some kind of ghost. The words should have hurt. Maybe a year ago, they would have. But I'd grown a thick skin, layer by layer, insult by insult. I'm sorry you feel that way, I said. Sorry. He set his glass down hard enough that I heard it crack. You're always sorry, aren't you? Sorry for existing. Sorry for being here. Sorry for not being enough. Adrien, I met someone. The words dropped into the silence like stones into still water. I didn't move, didn't breathe, just waited. Her name is Victoria Ashford. He said it with a kind of reverence, like speaking a sacred name. Ashford Hotels. Her family owns half the commercial real estate in this city. We met at the Garrison Foundation Gala 3 months ago. 3 months. I'd known something had shifted around then. The late nights had gotten later. The contempt in his voice had grown sharper, more confident. but knowing and hearing it confirmed were different animals. She's everything you're not, he continued. His voice had dropped lower, almost gentle, like he was trying to let me down easy. Sophisticated, connected. She understands the world I'm trying to break into, the world I belong in. I see. That's all you're going to say? I see. What did he want? Tears? Screaming? I'd cried myself empty 3 years ago, the night I realized I'd traded everything I was for a man who would never see me as anything more than an accessory he'd outgrown. What would you like me to say? He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a manila envelope. Set it on the table next to the cake. Victoria and I are getting engaged next month. Her father's already agreed. It's a smart match for both families. He pushed the envelope toward me. I had my lawyer draw these up. Sign them, and I'll make sure you're taken care of. The house is paid off. I'll cover your living expenses for 2 years. That should be enough time for you to figure out what comes next. I looked at the envelope. Didn't touch it. Divorce papers. Yes. On our anniversary. Something flickered in his expression. Maybe shame, maybe just irritation that I was making this harder than it needed to be. The timing isn't ideal, I know that. But dragging this out won't help either of us. How long have you been planning this? Does it matter? Yes. He sighed. 6 months. Maybe longer, I don't know. It's not like there was some specific moment. We just stopped making sense together. Like this was something that had happened to both of us. Some mutual drifting apart. Not him systematically dismantling our marriage while I kept trying to hold it together with both hands. I stood up slowly. My legs felt strange, distant, like they belonged to someone else. Lena, I need a minute. There's nothing to discuss. It's already decided. I'm trying to be decent about this, give you time to adjust, but I said, I need a minute. The sharpness in my voice stopped him. I walked out of the dining room, through the kitchen, out the back door onto the porch. The rain was heavier now, drumming against the roof, turning the yard into a blur of shadows. 7 years. I'd given him 7 years. I'd left behind everything I was, everyone I knew, walked away from a life most people couldn't even imagine existing. I'd chosen love, chosen the quiet dream of something normal, something safe, and he'd just told me I was being traded in for a better model. My phone was in my pocket. I pulled it out, scrolled through my contacts to a number I hadn't called in 7 years. My finger hovered over it. This was the line. Once I crossed it, there was no going back to being Lena Carter, the quiet suburban wife. That woman would disappear like she'd never existed at all. Inside, I heard Adrien moving around, opening drawers. He was probably looking for something to eat, having remembered he'd lied about dinner. Or maybe he was pouring another drink, celebrating his freedom. I pressed the call button. It rang once. Lena. The voice on the other end was exactly as I remembered it. Deep, controlled, dangerous in a way Adrien would never understand. Dante. Silence. Then, 7 years, I'd started to think you were dead. I was trying to be. Did it work? I watched rain stream off the porch roof, felt the cold air against my skin. No. Where are you? Same city, different life. I know where you are. Of course he did. Dante Moretti didn't lose track of things that belonged to him. I've known since the day you left. I'm asking if you're ready to come home. Home. The word felt foreign. This house wasn't home. It was a cage I'd built myself, bar by bar, year by year. But the world I'd left behind wasn't home either. It was power and danger and a future mapped out before I'd ever had a choice. My husband just asked me for a divorce. I know. You know, I make it my business to know things. There was something in his voice I couldn't quite read. Adrien Cole, mid-level investment analyst with delusions of grandeur, currently pursuing Victoria Ashford, daughter of Richard Ashford. Hotel empire, real estate holdings, legitimate money with dirty edges. He thinks marrying into that family will make him somebody. He'd been watching. All this time he'd been watching. Why didn't you stop it? Stop what? Your marriage? Your husband's affair? Dante's laugh was soft, almost amused. You chose to leave, Lena. I respected that choice. But you're calling me now, which means something's changed. Everything's changed. Good. I'll send a car. Dante. 1 hour. Pack what matters. Leave the rest. He hung up. I stood there holding my phone, listening to the rain, feeling the old life and the new life colliding inside my chest like tectonic plates shifting. Inside, Adrien was singing, off-key, drunk on scotch and freedom. He thought he'd won, thought he'd finally escaped the weight of a wife who didn't fit his aspirations. I walked back into the house. He was in the living room, tie completely off now, shoes kicked into the corner. He looked up when I entered, and something in my expression made him pause. "Did you think about what I said?" "I did." "And?" "I'll sign the papers." Relief washed over his face. That's good. That's the right choice, Lena, for both of us. You'll see. A few months from now, you'll realize this was... I need a pen. He blinked. What? A pen. To sign the papers. Oh, right. He fumbled in his jacket, pulled out an expensive fountain pen, a gift from Victoria probably, handed it to me. I took the envelope from the dining table, pulled out the documents. 30 pages of legal language that boiled down to one simple truth. He was erasing me from his life as efficiently as possible. I signed on every flagged line, dated it, slid the papers back into the envelope, and handed it to him. There, we're done. He took the envelope like he couldn't quite believe it had been that easy. I'll have my lawyer file these tomorrow. 6 months from now, it'll be finalized. Congratulations on your engagement. Lena, I mean it. I hope Victoria gives you everything you're looking for. He studied my face, searching for sarcasm, for hidden anger, but I'd learned to hide everything that mattered a long time ago. Thank you, he said finally, for understanding, for not making this ugly. I smiled. It felt strange on my face, like a mask that didn't quite fit anymore. Why would I make it ugly? You're right. We stopped making sense a long time ago. The word satisfied something in him. He nodded, relaxed, already mentally moving on to his next life. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight, he said. Tomorrow I'll start moving my things out. You can have the house. It's in the settlement. That's generous? I'm not a monster, Lena. No. He was just a man who'd never bothered to learn who he'd married. A man who thought power was something you earned through the right connections, the right marriage, the right performance. He had no idea what real power looked like. Good night, Adrien. Good night. I went upstairs to our bedroom, my bedroom now, I supposed. Pulled a suitcase from the closet and started packing. Not everything, just the things that had been mine before I became Mrs. Cole. Clothes I'd bought myself, books I'd loved, a few pieces of jewelry that had nothing to do with him. And from the back of my closet, behind the winter coats I never wore, I pulled out a small locked box. Inside was a phone. Not the one I'd used to call Dante. That was new, bought years ago as a safety line I'd hoped never to use. This was older. The phone I'd carried in my previous life. I turned it on for the first time in 7 years and watched it power up. 43 missed calls, hundreds of texts, all from the same number. I didn't read them. I already knew what they'd say. Variations on the same theme. Come home. You're not made for this. You belong here. I was almost finished packing when I heard the cars. 3 of them, engines purring to a stop in front of the house. No headlights. I looked out the window and saw shapes moving in the darkness, men in dark suits positioning themselves around the property with military precision. Adrien's voice drifted up from downstairs, sharp with confusion and rising fear. What the hell, Lena? Lena, there are people outside! I picked up my suitcase and walked downstairs. He was at the front window, pressing his face against the glass. Who are they? Did you call someone? What's... The doorbell rang. We both froze. Don't answer that, Adrien whispered. I'm calling the police. No, you're not. I walked past him and opened the door. The man standing on our porch was exactly as I remembered him. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark eyes that missed nothing, and a face that looked like it had been carved from stone. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than Adrien made in a month, and behind him stood 4 more men, silent and watchful. Lena. He didn't smile. Dante never smiled unless he meant it. Are you ready? Yes? Good. The car's waiting. Adrien appeared behind me, trying to sound authoritative and failing. Excuse me, who the hell are you? This is private property. You can't just... Dante's eyes shifted to him. Just for a second. But that second was enough to make Adrien's voice die in his throat. Adrien Cole, Dante said softly. The husband. Yes. Who are you? Nobody you need to worry about. Dante looked back at me. Say goodbye, Lena. We should go. I turned to Adrien. He was staring at Dante, at the men behind him, at the suitcase in my hand, putting together pieces of a puzzle he didn't have the context to solve. Who is he? Adrien asked. Lena, what's going on? I'm leaving. You said you'd sign the papers. You said, I did sign them. We're divorced, Adrien, or we will be in 6 months. You're free to marry Victoria, build your empire, be everything you think you're supposed to be. Then why? Because I'm done playing house. I'm done pretending to be someone I'm not. I gave you 7 years. I gave you everything I had, and you just told me it wasn't enough. Lena, so now I'm going back to who I was before I met you, before I thought love was more important than power, before I believed I could be ordinary. Dante's hand touched my shoulder lightly. The car. I stepped past Adrien, through the door, into the rain. One of the men took my suitcase. Another opened an umbrella over my head. The black SUV at the curb had its rear door open, waiting. Lena! Adrien followed us onto the porch. You can't just leave like this. We need to talk about the house, about the settlement, about... I stopped, turned back to him one last time. He looked so small standing there in his expensive shirt and his bare feet, confusion and fear written across his face in equal measure. The house is yours, I said. Keep it. Keep everything. I don't need your settlement, Adrien. I never did. Then what do you need? I looked at Dante, at the men surrounding us, silent and lethal, at the life I'd walked away from 7 years ago, now standing on this suburban street like it had been waiting patiently for me to come to my senses. I need to remind some people who I am. I got into the car. Dante slid in beside me. The door closed, cutting off Adrien's voice mid-sentence. The driver pulled away from the curb smoothly, and I watched through the rear window as the house disappeared behind us. Adrien was still standing on the porch, getting soaked, watching his quiet wife vanish into the night with dangerous men and a past he'd never bothered to ask about. Are you all right? Dante asked. I don't know yet. That's honest. The city lights blurred past the window. We were heading downtown toward the part of the city where money moved in shadows and power was measured in loyalty rather than stock portfolios. Where are we going? Home. Dante? Your apartment is exactly as you left it. I've had it maintained, cleaned weekly, your clothes are still in the closet, your books on the shelves. Nothing's been touched. 7 years. He'd kept my apartment untouched for 7 years. Why? Because I knew you'd come back. He said it simply, like it was an obvious fact. You're not made for their world, Lena. You never were. You can pretend, you can play the part, but eventually you remember who you really are. And who am I? He turned to look at me fully. In the dim light of the car, his face was all sharp angles and shadows. You're Lena Moretti, my fiancée, the only person I've ever trusted with the truth of what I am. And you're about to remember what it feels like to have real power instead of begging for scraps from a man who never deserved you. We were never officially engaged. Semantics. Our families arranged it before you were born. You wore my ring until the day you ran away to play house with Adrien Cole. I loved him. I know. No judgment in his voice, just acceptance of a fact. And he wasted it. Spent 7 years slowly crushing everything you are until you convinced yourself you were nothing. That's what men like him do. They find strong women and spend their lives making them small. The car stopped in front of a building I recognized. 30 stories of steel and glass in the heart of the financial district. But the real power in this building wasn't financial. It was the kind that moved beneath the surface of the city like a current, invisible but undeniable. We took a private elevator to the top floor. The doors opened directly into an apartment that had been frozen in time. Everything exactly as I'd left it 7 years ago. The books I'd been reading still stacked on the coffee table. The jacket I'd worn the day I left still hanging in the closet. I'll give you tonight to settle in, Dante said. Tomorrow, we need to talk about what comes next. What does come next? That depends on what you want. If you want to disappear, I can arrange that. New city, new identity, new life. You'd be safe, comfortable, free. And if I don't want to disappear? His smile was thin and sharp. Then we remind your husband exactly who he tried to divorce. And we make sure the Ashfords understand what happens when they welcome a man into their family without doing proper research into his background. Meaning? Meaning Adrien Cole is about to learn that marrying up requires more than ambition. It requires not having dangerous enemies. And as of tonight, he has the most dangerous enemy he could possibly imagine. You. No, Lena. He moved toward the door, then paused. You. He left me alone in the apartment. I stood in the center of the living room, surrounded by ghosts of who I'd been. Young, idealistic, convinced that I could choose a different path than the one carved out for me before I was born. My phone rang. The new one, not the old one. Adrien. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again and again. On the fourth call, I answered. Lena, thank God, you need to come back. We need to talk about this. Those men, whoever they are, they're dangerous. I'm calling the police. I'm going to... Adrien, stop. You don't understand what you're involved in. These people, they're... I understand perfectly. Better than you do. Then come back. Let me protect you. I almost laughed. Protect me? From what? From whatever trouble you're in. From whoever those people are. Lena, I know things haven't been good between us, but I still care about you. I don't want to see you hurt. You cared so much you handed me divorce papers on our anniversary. Silence. That's different, he said finally. This is about your safety. No, this is about you realizing you don't know anything about the woman you married. This is about you suddenly scared because men in expensive suits showed up and took me away, and you have no idea what that means. So tell me, who are they? Who is he? Dante Moretti. I heard him suck in a breath. Even Adrien, with his limited understanding of how real power worked in this city, knew that name. The Moretti family. Jesus Christ, Lena, what have you done? I haven't done anything. I just stopped pretending to be someone I'm not. You can't be serious. You can't actually be involved with them, with him. Do you know what they do? What he is? Yes. Then you know you need to get out. Now, before it's too late. It's been too late since the day I met you, Adrien. I just didn't realize it until tonight. Lena, enjoy your new life. Marry Victoria. Build your empire. I hope it's everything you dreamed it would be. I hung up, blocked his number, and for the first time in 7 years, I felt like I could breathe. The next morning, I woke up in my old bed, in my old apartment, and for a moment I forgot where I was. Then it all came rushing back. The anniversary, the divorce papers, the phone call. Dante. I got up, showered, and found a closet full of clothes I barely remembered buying. Designer labels, tailored fits, the kind of wardrobe that came with the territory of being connected to the Moretti family. I chose a black dress, simple, elegant, armor. Dante was in the kitchen when I emerged, reading something on his tablet and drinking coffee. Good morning. Morning. I poured myself a cup. You stayed here last night? Guest room. I wanted to be here when you woke up in case you tried to run again. I'm not running. Good. He set down the tablet. We need to discuss Adrien. What about him? What do you want to do about him? I sipped my coffee, considering. A week ago, the question wouldn't have made sense. Now, with Dante's resources at my disposal, it meant something entirely different. I don't want him dead. That's not what I asked. I know. But I'm telling you anyway. No matter what happens, I don't want him killed. Dante studied me. You still love him. No, but I don't want to become someone who solves problems with violence. That's not who I am. Then who are you? Good question. I'd spent 7 years being Adrien's wife. Before that, I'd been Lena Moretti's daughter, promised to Dante before I was old enough to understand what that meant. But who was I when I stripped away everyone else's expectations? I'm someone who's tired of being underestimated, I said finally. I'm someone who gave up everything for love and got nothing in return, and I'm someone who's ready to take back what's mine. Which is? Respect, power, a life where I'm not invisible. Dante smiled, not the thin, sharp smile from last night, a real one. There's the woman I remember. So what do? We introduce you properly to society. Let people know you're back. Let the right people start asking the right questions about Adrien Cole and his upcoming marriage to Victoria Ashford. You want to ruin him socially. I want to make him irrelevant. There's a difference. Ruining him would be quick. Making him irrelevant is slower, more painful, and permanent. How? The Ashfords move in certain circles, exclusive circles. They're very careful about who they associate with because their reputation is their currency. If it came out that Victoria's fiancé had connections to organized crime through his ex-wife, they'd drop him immediately. Faster than immediately. Richard Ashford has political aspirations. The last thing he needs is his daughter married to someone connected, however tangentially, to my family. But I left your family 7 years ago. Did you? Dante leaned back in his chair. We were engaged, Lena. That doesn't just disappear because you spent some time playing house. To anyone who matters, you're still mine. And Adrien Cole, by extension, became connected to me the day he married you. That's not fair to him. Fair? Dante laughed. He divorced you for a richer woman and handed you papers on your anniversary. Fair doesn't enter into it. He had a point. When do we start? Tonight. There's a charity gala at the Sinclair Hotel. The Ashfords will be there. Victoria will probably bring Adrien. Show him off to her circle before the engagement is official. We'll make an appearance. And say what? Nothing. We don't have to say anything. Just being there together will be enough. Questions will be asked. People will start digging. And when they dig into Adrien's background, they'll find you. And when they find you, they'll find me. It was elegant in its simplicity. No threats, no violence. Just the quiet destruction of a man's carefully constructed future through association and implication. I need a dress. Already arranged. Designer is coming at 2. Of course he'd already arranged it. I spent the rest of the day being fitted for a gown that probably cost more than Adrien's car. Deep emerald green, cut to perfection, designed to make a statement. The designer, a woman named Sophia, who clearly knew exactly who Dante was and what family I belonged to, kept the conversation light and professional. By 6 p.m., I was ready. Dante was waiting in the living room, wearing a tuxedo that looked like it had been designed specifically for him. Probably had been. You look beautiful, he said. Thank you. Are you ready for this? No, but I'm doing it anyway. The Sinclair was the kind of hotel where visiting dignitaries stayed and deals were made over cocktails that cost more than some people's monthly rent. The gala was in the ballroom. 300 of the city's elite gathered to throw money at whatever cause was fashionable this month. We arrived late. Fashionably late, Dante called it. Strategically late, I thought. The moment we walked in, conversation stuttered. Heads turned. I felt the weight of 300 pairs of eyes assessing, calculating, trying to figure out who I was and why I was on Dante Moretti's arm. Stay close, Dante murmured. Let them wonder. We moved through the room like sharks through shallow water. People parted for us, some nodding respectfully to Dante, others pretending they hadn't noticed us at all. But everyone noticed. That was the point. I saw Adrien before he saw me. He was standing near the bar with a woman who had to be Victoria Ashford. Tall, blonde, elegant in a way that came from generations of money and breeding. She was laughing at something he'd said, touching his arm with casual ownership. Then she looked up and saw Dante. Her smile faltered. She said something to Adrien. He turned. Our eyes met across the ballroom. I watched the color drain from his face. Watched him take an involuntary step backward. Watched Victoria's expression shift from confusion to concern as she tried to understand why her fiancé looked like he'd seen a ghost. Dante guided me closer. Not directly toward them, that would be too obvious. Just circulating through the crowd in a pattern that would inevitably bring us into their orbit. Dante Moretti, a voice said behind us. I heard you might be here tonight. We turned. Richard Ashford stood there, tall and silver-haired, with the kind of presence that came from decades of commanding rooms full of powerful people. Richard, Dante shook his hand. Good to see you. And who's this? Ashford's eyes moved to me, assessing. Lena Moretti, Dante said smoothly. My fiancée. The word hung in the air like a blade. Moretti, Ashford repeated. Any relation to the Morettis? She is the Morettis. Lena is family. Dante's hand tightened slightly on my waist. Just returned to the city after some time away. I see. Ashford's expression was carefully neutral, but I could see the calculations happening behind his eyes. Well, welcome back. If you'll excuse me, I should check on my daughter. He moved away with purpose. That's done, Dante said quietly. What's done? Richard Ashford now knows you exist. He knows you're connected to me, and he's about to have a very interesting conversation with Victoria about her fiancé's ex-wife. I watched Ashford approach Adrien and Victoria, watched him lean in, say something that made Victoria's eyes go wide, watched Adrien try to explain something while looking increasingly desperate. I should feel guilty, I said, but you don't. No. Good. Guilt is a luxury you can't afford anymore. We stayed for another hour. Long enough to be seen, to be remembered, to let the rumors start spreading through the room like wildfire. Then Dante guided me toward the exit. Adrien intercepted us near the door. Lena, we need to talk. Up close, he looked worse than he had across the room, pale, sweating slightly despite the air conditioning. I don't think we do, I said. Please, just 5 minutes. Dante's hand moved to the small of my back, a subtle gesture of support and warning. What do you want, Adrien? What are you doing here, with him? Lena, do you have any idea what you're getting yourself into? More than you apparently did when you married me. I didn't know. How could I have known? You never asked. 7 years, and you never once asked about my family, my background, where I came from before I met you. You just assumed I was nobody because that's what you needed me to be. That's not... It is. You needed a wife who made you feel important, someone to cook your dinners and validate your ambitions while you climbed whatever ladder you thought led to the top. And when I stopped serving that purpose, you traded me in. Victoria appeared beside him, linking her arm through his with territorial precision. Adrien, darling, your father wants to introduce you to the Hendersons. She looked at me, then at Dante, and I saw recognition click into place. You're Lena Cole, she said. Moretti, I corrected gently. I'm going back to my family name. Of course. Her smile was ice-wrapped in politeness. Adrien mentioned you'd signed the divorce papers. I hope everything is amicable. Very. I returned her smile with equal frost. Congratulations on your engagement. I hope you'll both be very happy. We will be. She pulled Adrien slightly closer. Won't we, darling? Adrien looked like he wanted to say something else, but Victoria was already steering him away, and Richard Ashford was watching from across the room with an expression that promised uncomfortable conversations in Adrien's immediate future. That went well, Dante said as we walked out into the cool night air. Did it? Better than expected, you were perfect. Polite, composed, and just threatening enough to plant doubts. What happens now? Now we wait. The Ashfords will investigate. They'll find out about us, about my family, about the fact that Adrien's ex-wife is connected to organized crime, and they'll have to decide if Victoria's happiness is worth the risk to their reputation. And if they decide it is, then we move to Plan B, which is? Haven't decided yet, but I'm thinking something involving Adrien's business dealings. Nothing illegal, just questionable enough to make the Ashfords nervous. We drove back to the apartment in silence. I stared out the window at the city lights, thinking about the woman I'd been this morning versus the woman I was now. 24 hours, and my entire world had inverted. Do you regret it? Dante asked as we rode the elevator up. Regret what? Leaving, 7 years ago. Sometimes, when things were good with Adrien, when I thought maybe I'd made the right choice, maybe love was enough. I looked at him. But mostly no. I regret staying as long as I did, trying to make it work when it was clear he didn't value what I was offering. And now? Now I'm angry. At him for wasting my time. At myself for letting him. The elevator doors opened. Anger is useful, Dante said, as long as you control it instead of letting it control you. Is that what you do? Every day. I went to bed that night in my old apartment, in my old life, and dreamed of 7 years evaporating like smoke. When I woke up, there was a missed call from a number I didn't recognize. The voicemail was Victoria Ashford. Miss Moretti, this is Victoria Ashford. I think we should talk. Privately. There are some questions I have about your marriage to Adrien, and I'd appreciate your perspective before my family makes any decisions. Please call me back at your earliest convenience. I played it twice, listening to the careful control in her voice. She was scared, or at least concerned enough to reach out directly instead of going through intermediaries. Dante was already in the kitchen when I emerged. Victoria Ashford called me. He looked up from his coffee. That was faster than expected. What should I tell her? The truth. Edited, but truthful. She wants to know if Adrien lied about who you are, what you mean to me, whether marrying him puts her family at risk. Answer her questions honestly. Let her draw her own conclusions. You think she'll break off the engagement? I think she's smart enough to recognize a liability when she sees one. I called Victoria back. We met for lunch at a quiet restaurant in a part of town where neither of us would be recognized. She was already there when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with the kind of posture that spoke to years of etiquette training. Thank you for meeting me, she said as I slid into the seat across from her. Of course. I'll be direct. My father has concerns about Adrien's background, specifically about you. I see. Are you actually engaged to Dante Moretti? Yes, but you were married to Adrien for 7 years. I left. I thought I could have a normal life. I was wrong. She studied me carefully. Did Adrien know about your family connections? No, I didn't tell him. I wanted to leave that life behind. But you didn't. You can't leave family, not really. You can run from it, ignore it, pretend it doesn't exist, but eventually it catches up to you. So Adrien had no idea he was marrying into a crime family. The bluntness of it was almost refreshing. No, and I'm not married into anything. I'm born into it. There's a difference. Not to my father, not to the people whose opinions matter for my family's reputation. I understand. Do you? She leaned forward slightly. My father has political aspirations, real ones. Mayor next year, governor eventually, maybe more. He can't have any association with organized crime, no matter how distant. And Adrien provides that association through me, through you, through Dante Moretti, through the fact that you two appeared together at a gala last night like some kind of power couple announcement. We're engaged. We've been engaged since before I met Adrien. From my family's perspective, nothing's changed. Everything's changed. Victoria's voice was tight. I care about Adrien. I'm not going to pretend this is purely strategic. I love him, but I also know what's at stake for my family. So you're here to ask me what? To disappear again? I'm here to understand if there's any way forward that doesn't involve my family being connected to Dante Moretti through my marriage to your ex-husband. I could have lied. Could have told her there was a way out, that I'd stay out of sight, that the association would fade with time. But Dante had told me to be truthful, and something about Victoria's directness made me want to respect that. No, I said. As long as you're with Adrien, my family will be part of the equation. That's just reality. Even though you left him? I didn't leave him for Dante. I left him because he asked me to, because he wanted a different life, a different wife. But I came back to Dante, and in our world that means something. She sat back, processing. My father is going to ask me to break off the engagement. Probably. And if I don't, then you'll spend the rest of your life managing the political fallout of being connected, however tangentially, to organized crime. Every campaign, every election, every time your father runs for office, this will come up. Opposition research will find me, find Dante, find the connection. It won't ever go away. That's what I thought. She signaled for the check. Thank you for being honest. For what it's worth, I'm sorry. Adrien doesn't deserve to lose you because of mistakes I made 7 years ago. Doesn't he? Her smile was sad. He married you without bothering to learn who you were. He spent 7 years with you and never asked the right questions. That's not your mistake, that's his. She left cash on the table and walked out. I sat there for a long time after she was gone, drinking cold coffee and thinking about the strange morality of the world I'd returned to. In Adrien's world, success was measured in contracts and connections and climbing the right ladders. In Dante's world, success was measured in loyalty, fear, and the ability to destroy your enemies without ever throwing a punch. And in my world, the one I was building somewhere between those two extremes, success was measured in taking back everything I'd lost when I thought I could be ordinary. 3 days later, the engagement between Adrien Cole and Victoria Ashford was quietly called off. It made the society pages. Mutual decision. Remain friends. Timing wasn't right. Adrien called me 17 times that day. I didn't answer. Finally, he showed up at the apartment building. Dante's security stopped him in the lobby, but I watched on the security feed as he demanded to see me, demanded answers, demanded something that would make sense of his life falling apart. "You should talk to him," Dante said, standing beside me as we watched the scene unfold below. "Why?" "Because he deserves to understand what he lost, and you deserve to say it to his face." I took the elevator down. Adrien was still arguing with security when I appeared. He stopped mid-sentence when he saw me. "Lena, thank God. We need to talk. This is insane. Victoria broke off the engagement. Her father won't take my calls. My job is asking questions about my associations. My entire life is imploding, and I don't understand why." "Because you didn't know who you married." "I know. I get it. You're connected to dangerous people. But that's not my fault. I didn't know." "Exactly. You didn't know. 7 years, Adrien. 7 years of marriage, and you never once asked me about my family, my past, where I came from. You just assumed I was nobody because that's what was convenient for you. That's not fair." "No, what's not fair is you spending 7 years making me feel small, making me feel like I wasn't enough, mocking our life together while you chased after women who could give you the status you thought you deserved." "I made mistakes. I know that. But this," he gestured vaguely at the building, at the security, at the life I'd returned to. "This is excessive. Ruining my engagement, destroying my career, all because I asked for a divorce? I didn't ruin your engagement. You did, by not knowing who you married. I didn't destroy your career. You did by building it on connections that couldn't survive basic scrutiny. So what? This is revenge? You're punishing me for wanting something better?" And there it was. The fundamental disconnect that had always existed between us. "You think you wanted something better," I said quietly. "You think marrying into money and power is the same as being powerful. But it's not. Real power isn't something you marry into, Adrien. It's something you're born with, or something you build yourself, or something you take when the opportunity presents itself. And you have real power. Yes. Because of him. Because of Dante Moretti. No. Because of who I am. Because of the family I was born into. Dante is part of that power, yes. But so am I. And I gave it all up for you. Walked away from an empire because I thought love mattered more. And now? Now I know better." He stared at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. Maybe the woman he'd married had never really existed. "What happens now?" he asked finally. "That's up to you. You can try to rebuild your life, find a new position, start over somewhere that doesn't care about your ex-wife's family connections. Or you can keep trying to blame me for the consequences of your own choices." "I loved you." "No. You loved the idea of me, the quiet wife who made you feel important. You never loved who I actually was, because you never bothered to find out." I turned to go back to the elevator. "Lena." I stopped but didn't turn around. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For the way I treated you. For not seeing what I had until it was gone." "I know." The elevator doors closed between us. When I got back upstairs, Dante was exactly where I'd left him. "Feel better?" "Not really." "You will." He was right. Over the next few weeks, as Adrien's life continued to quietly unravel and my life expanded back into the space I'd carved out before I left, I did feel better. Not happy, exactly, but clearer, more certain. This was who I was. Not Lena Carter, the suburban wife. Not even Lena Cole, the woman who thought she could choose ordinary. But Lena Moretti, born into power, promised to power, and finally ready to stop apologizing for it. The thing about returning to a life you'd abandoned was that everyone remembered. They remembered the girl who'd run away from her engagement, disappeared into suburban obscurity, chased some romantic notion that she could be normal. And now they watched with a particular kind of anticipation, waiting to see if she'd run again. Lena felt their eyes everywhere. At the restaurants Dante took her to, where silent men in expensive suits nodded respectfully, but their wives whispered behind designer handbags. At the family meetings held in private dining rooms where her father presided over discussions of territory and loyalty like a king dispensing judgment. Even at the apartment, where Dante's security detail rotated shifts with military precision, always present, always watching. "You need to be seen," Dante said one morning over breakfast. He was reading through reports on his tablet, the the same way Adrien used to read the financial news, except Dante's reports detailed shipments and payments and territorial disputes instead of stock prices. Not just with me, with the family. People need to understand you're back for real. I thought showing up at the gala handled that. That announced your presence. This is different. This is about proving you belong here. Lena set down her coffee cup harder than she intended. I was born into this family. I don't need to prove anything. You were born into it and then you left for 7 years. You chose a different life, Lena. Now you need to choose this one, publicly, or people will keep wondering when you're going to run again. I'm not running. I know that. You know that. But they don't. Not yet. She hated that he was right. Hated the politics of it. The performance required to maintain power in a world where perception mattered as much as reality. But she'd made her choice when she called him that night, when she got into the car and left Adrien standing in the rain. What do you want me to do? Dinner, Friday night, the whole family. Your father wants to formally welcome you back. Her father. Vincent Moretti, who'd arranged her engagement to Dante when she was 17, who'd been furious when she disappeared with Adrien, who'd spent 7 years pretending his youngest daughter didn't exist rather than acknowledge the embarrassment of her defection. He wants to welcome me back, or he wants to make sure I'm properly chastised. Dante looked up from his tablet. Both, probably. But mostly he wants to know if you're staying, if you're committed, if you've finally grown up. I spent 7 years married. I think that qualifies as grown up. You spent 7 years playing house with a man who didn't deserve you. That's not the same thing. The words stung more than they should have. Maybe because they were true. She'd convinced herself that choosing love over obligation was maturity, was taking control of her own life. But she'd just traded one set of expectations for another. Adrien's had just been quieter, wrapped in passive contempt instead of direct command. Fine. Friday night. I'll be there. Wear something that makes a statement. They need to see the woman who belongs here, not the girl who ran away. That afternoon, Lena went shopping with Sophia, the designer who'd fitted her for the gala dress. Except calling it shopping was generous. Sophia brought selections to the apartment, transformed the living room into a private showroom, and proceeded to dress Lena like a doll while offering commentary on family politics. Carmela will be there, Sophia said, holding up a deep burgundy dress against Lena's frame. Dante's sister. She never liked you. I remember. She's gotten worse. Married Marco Benedetti last year. Big wedding, very traditional. She's been positioning herself as the proper family daughter ever since you left. Lena turned to study herself in the mirror. The burgundy dress was beautiful, elegant, but safe. What about this one? Sophia held up something in midnight blue, cut low in the back, with a slit that ran dangerously high. This says you're not here to apologize. I'll take it. Friday came too fast and not fast enough. Lena spent the day alternating between pacing the apartment and sitting very still, trying to convince herself she was ready for this. Dante left her alone, which she appreciated. He understood in a way Adrien never had, that some battles you needed to fight in your own head before you could fight them anywhere else. At 6:30, she put on the midnight blue dress, applied makeup with precision that felt like armor, pulled her hair back in a way that exposed the diamond earrings Dante had sent over that morning. A gift, the note said, but really a claim. Everyone would recognize them as Moretti diamonds, would understand what they meant. Dante knocked on her bedroom door at 7. Ready? No? Good. If you were ready, I'd be worried you weren't taking this seriously. The drive to her father's house took 20 minutes through Friday night traffic. Lena watched the city pass outside the window, neighborhoods shifting from commercial to residential to the kind of wealthy enclave where houses sat behind gates and privacy hedges. The Moretti estate looked exactly as she remembered. Stone and iron and old money, built by her grandfather in the 50s and maintained like a fortress ever since. Cars lined the circular driveway. Mercedes, BMWs, one Bentley that had to be her Uncle Tony's. The whole family, assembled to pass judgment. We don't have to go in, Dante said quietly. She looked at him. Yes, we do. I mean it. If you want to leave, we leave. I'll handle your father. And spend the rest of my life knowing I ran again? No, I'm done running. She got out of the car before her courage failed. The front door opened before they reached it. Carlo, her father's head of security, stood there with the same impassive expression he'd worn for as long as Lena could remember. Miss Moretti. Mr. Moretti, your father is in the dining room. The house smelled like her childhood, wood polish and espresso and something cooking that made her stomach twist with unexpected nostalgia. She followed Carlo through the familiar hallways, past family photos she'd been edited out of, to the formal dining room where 20 people sat around a table laden with enough food to feed twice that many. Her father sat at the head of the table. Vincent Moretti, 68 years old, silver-haired, with the kind of presence that made even standing still feel like a power move. He looked up when she entered, and his expression didn't change. Didn't soften, didn't harden, just assessed. Lena, you're late. We hit traffic. Sit. She took the chair Dante pulled out for her, 2 seats down from her father's right hand, close enough to be included, far enough to remember her place. The message was clear. Around the table, familiar faces stared back at her. Uncle Tony and Aunt Marie, cousins she'd grown up with, and Carmela, Dante's sister, sitting directly across from her with a smile that could have cut glass. Lena, Carmela said warmly, it's been so long, you look different. 7 years will do that. I imagine so. Married life must have agreed with you. It ended. Yes, we heard. Such a shame. And right before he was going to marry into the Ashford family. I suppose timing has never been your strong suit. Dante's hand found Lena's under the table, squeezed once. A warning or support, she wasn't sure which. Carmela, Vincent said mildly, let's eat before the food gets cold. Dinner was served. Lena moved food around her plate and tried to remember how to exist in this room, at this table, with these people who knew her history but not her truth. They talked around her more than to her. Business, family matters, things that had happened in the 7 years she'd been gone. She was a ghost at her own welcome home dinner. Halfway through the second course, her father finally addressed her directly. You signed the divorce papers. Yes. Quickly. He'd already moved on. There wasn't any point in dragging it out. And the settlement? I didn't take it. The house was his. I didn't want anything from him. Her father's eyebrow raised fractionally. Nothing? Nothing. That's pride talking. That's self-respect talking. I don't need his money. No. You have your own. Or you did before you disappeared. He set down his fork with deliberate care. The trust fund we set up for you has been sitting untouched for 7 years. $2 million, growing interest. It's yours. If you want it. If you stay. The condition hung in the air like smoke. And if I don't stay? Then it goes to charity. I'm not interested in funding another disappearing act. Lena met his eyes. They were the same shade as hers, dark brown, almost black in certain light. Everyone always said she looked like her mother, but she had her father's eyes. And right now those eyes were testing her, waiting to see if she'd flinch. I'm staying. For how long? As long as it takes. As long as what takes? She glanced at Dante, then back to her father. As long as it takes to remember who I am. To stop apologizing for the life I was born into. To build something that's mine instead of running from something that wasn't. Vincent studied her for a long moment. Then he picked up his wine glass. To family, then. And to second chances. Everyone raised their glasses. Lena drank and tasted 7 years of choices, crystallizing into something she couldn't take back. After dinner, the men retired to Vincent's study for cigars and whatever business couldn't be discussed in mixed company. The women gathered in the sitting room, which was tradition, which was bullshit, but which Lena endured because picking that particular battle tonight would be strategic suicide. Carmela wasted exactly 3 minutes on small talk before going for the throat. So, Adrien Cole, was he worth it? Lena looked up from her coffee. The other women had gone suddenly quiet, sensing blood in the water. Worth what? Leaving. Abandoning your family, your responsibilities, your engagement. Was he worth 7 years of pretending to be somebody you're not? He was at the time. And now? Now I know better. Carmela leaned forward, her expression somewhere between curiosity and cruelty. What was it like? Being normal? Grocery shopping and neighborhood barbecues and all that suburban nonsense? Quiet. Quiet, Carmela laughed. That's what you wanted? Quiet? You could have had anything. Power, money, respect. Instead, you chose quiet. I chose love. And how did that work out? Lena set down her cup carefully. About as well as your marriage, I'd imagine. The room went dead silent. Carmela's smile froze. Excuse me? Marco Benedetti, your husband. Does he know about the affair you had with Paolo Ricci 3 months before your wedding? Or is that still our little family secret? Carmela's face went white, then red. How dare you? I've been gone, not dead. I still hear things. And unlike you, I don't pretend to be something I'm not. Lena stood up, smoothing her dress. You want to judge my choices? Fine. But don't act like yours are any cleaner. She walked out before Carmela could respond, found herself in the hallway, breathing hard, wondering when exactly she'd grown teeth. Dante found her 10 minutes later, standing in the library staring at books she used to read as a teenager. I heard you made Carmela cry. She started it. I know, she always does. He moved to stand beside her. My sister has never forgiven you for leaving. She thought you were weak, thought you proved women couldn't handle this life. And now she's scared you're stronger than she is. Lena turned to look at him. Am I? Different kind of strong. Carmela survived by becoming exactly what was expected of her. You survived by walking away from it. That takes a different kind of courage. Or stupidity. Sometimes they're the same thing. They stayed in the library until Vincent's meeting ended and the family started filtering out. Polite goodbyes, kisses on cheeks, promises to get together soon that everyone knew were lies. Carmela left without speaking to her. Her father walked them to the door. You did well tonight, Vincent said. I insulted your business partner's daughter and stormed out of the sitting room. Like I said, you did well. He almost smiled. Your mother would have been proud. The mention of her mother caught Lena off guard. Maria Moretti had died when Lena was 15, cancer that ate her up over 2 years while Vincent pretended everything was fine. They never talked about her. It was an unspoken rule. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This was the easy part. Next week, you start actually working for the family. Dante will bring you up to speed. Working? Doing what? Whatever needs doing. You have a degree in business, correct? From before you decided to play house? Yes, but no buts. You want to prove you're staying? Prove you're useful. We'll find something that fits your skills. He closed the door before she could argue. In the car on the way back, Lena stared out the window and tried to process the evening. She'd survived it, which was something, but she'd also been backed into a corner she hadn't seen coming. Working for the family meant being visible, being involved, being complicit in ways that making a single phone call hadn't required. You knew, she said to Dante. I suspected. And you didn't warn me? Would you have come if I had? Probably not. What kind of work? Legitimate businesses mostly. We own several restaurants, some real estate holdings, a few import companies. You'd probably start with the books. Someone needs to make sure everything looks clean on paper. Money laundering, financial management. Don't insult my intelligence. He shrugged. Fine. Yes. Part of what you'd be doing is making sure our various revenue streams don't attract the wrong kind of attention. But it's not all illegal, Lena. Most of what we do is completely above board. The other stuff just happens around the edges. And if I say no? Then you say no, but your father won't trust you, the family won't trust you, and you'll spend the rest of your life on the outside looking in, wondering if you made the right choice. Back at the apartment, Lena changed out of the midnight blue dress and into pajamas. Washed off the makeup, took out the diamond earrings, became herself again, except she wasn't sure who that was anymore. Dante was still awake when she came out, sitting in the living room with a book she was certain he wasn't actually reading. I'm not my father, he said without looking up. What? Vincent, the way he operates. I'm not him. When we get married, when you're officially part of my operation and not just Vincent's daughter, things will be different. Different how? I don't believe in forcing people into roles they don't want. You're smart, educated, capable. I'm not going to waste that by making you some trophy wife who shows up to dinners and keeps her mouth shut. But I'm also not going to pretend this life is something it's not. Lena sat down across from him. What do you want from me, Dante? What do you mean? You've waited 7 years, kept my apartment, stepped back in the moment I called. You say you respect my choices, but you're clearly orchestrating my return. So what do you actually want? He closed the book. A partner. Someone who understands this world and doesn't flinch from it. Someone I can trust when everyone else is either scared of me or trying to use me. You could have found that with someone else. 7 years is a long time. I didn't want someone else. Why? He looked at her directly then, and his expression was more open than she'd ever seen it. Because you're the only person who's ever seen me as something other than what I am. When we were younger, before you left, you looked at me like I was a person instead of a position. And I'd forgotten what that felt like until you came back. The honesty of it caught in her chest. Adrien had wanted her to see him as important, as successful, as worthy. Dante just wanted to be seen as human. I can't promise I'm what you remember, she said quietly. I'm not what you remember either. We've both changed, but maybe that's better. Maybe we can build something new instead of trying to resurrect what was. That night, Lena lay in bed thinking about futures and choices and the strange path that had led her from suburban housewife back to the world she'd tried to escape. She'd thought leaving was the brave choice. Turned out staying might be harder. Monday morning, Dante took her to meet with Uncle Tony, who ran the family's restaurant operations. 4 locations across the city, all successful, all needing someone to manage the books and make sure the health inspector stayed happy and the revenue looked legitimate. You'll start with Lucia's, Tony said, sliding a folder across his desk. It's our smallest location, easiest to learn. Get familiar with the systems, meet the staff, figure out where the inefficiencies are. Lena opened the folder. Spreadsheets, tax documents, supplier invoices. It looked like normal restaurant management, but she knew better than to think that's all it was. What am I really looking for? Tony glanced at Dante, then back to her. Smart girl, you're looking for discrepancies, places where the numbers don't quite add up, where cash flow seems weird, where someone might be skimming. We trust our people, but trust requires verification. And if I find something, you tell me. I handle it from there. She spent the next week buried in financial records, learning the rhythm of how money moved through Lucia's. Most of it was exactly what it appeared to be, a moderately successful Italian restaurant in a good neighborhood doing steady business. But there were oddities, cash deposits that didn't match the daily receipts, supplier invoices for amounts that seemed inflated, payroll for employees who didn't appear on the schedule. She made notes, cross-referenced everything. And on Friday, she presented her findings to Tony. He listened without interruption, then leaned back in his chair and smiled. You found all of it. All of what? The test. Half that stuff I planted to see if you'd catch it. The other half is real problems that have been going on for months. You just saved us about $50,000 a year in losses. You were testing me. Of course I was testing you. You think we're going to hand you real responsibility without knowing if you can handle it? He pulled out another folder, thicker than the first. Here, this is Alessandro's, our flagship location. Been running smoothly for years, but the manager just retired and we need someone to take over. Interested? Lena stared at the folder. This was real. Not an entry-level position or some made-up job to keep her busy. Actual responsibility, actual trust. I don't know anything about running a restaurant. You know business. You know numbers. The kitchen staff knows food. You just need to make sure everything runs clean and profitable and nobody asks questions we don't want to answer. She took the folder. That night she met Dante for dinner at Alessandro's. He'd reserved a private room in the back, away from the regular customers, where they could talk freely. Congratulations, he said, raising his wine glass. Uncle Tony never gives anyone Alessandro's unless he trusts them completely. He's testing me. He tested you. Past tense. This is trust. The food came. Pasta that dissolved on the tongue, veal that fell apart at the touch of a fork, wine that probably cost more than Adrien's monthly car payment. Lena ate and tried to reconcile the woman sitting here in a private dining room with the woman who'd baked anniversary cakes for a husband who didn't appreciate them. Adrien called me yesterday, she said. Dante's expression didn't change. And he wants to meet, talk things through. He says he's been thinking about our marriage, about the mistakes he made. Do you want to see him? I don't know. Part of me is curious, wants to know if he's actually sorry or if he just wants something. And the other part? The other part thinks seeing him is going backwards, like I'd be proving I'm not really over it. Are you? Over it? Lena considered the question honestly. I'm over him. I'm not over being angry about it. Then maybe that's your answer. You don't owe him closure, Lena. You don't owe him anything. But she agreed to meet him anyway. Wednesday afternoon, coffee shop in neutral territory, public enough to be safe, but quiet enough to talk. Adrien was already there when she arrived, looking worse than she'd ever seen him. Thinner, circles under his eyes, the kind of exhaustion that came from your life imploding, and not understanding why. "Thank you for coming," he said. She sat down across from him. "You have 20 minutes. "Right, okay." He wrapped his hands around his coffee cup like it was the only solid thing in his world. "I've been doing a lot of thinking. About us. About what went wrong. You asked for a divorce. I know I did. And I was wrong. Not about the problems. We had real problems, Lena. But about how I handled them. About everything, really." "What do you want, Adrien?" "I want to understand who you are, who you really are. I spent 7 years married to you, and I'm realizing I don't actually know anything about you. You never asked. I know, that's on me, but I'm asking now, the Morettis, Dante, the life you came from. Why didn't you ever tell me? Would you have married me if I had?" He opened his mouth, closed it. The answer was in the silence. "Exactly," Lena said. "You wanted a certain kind of wife, quiet, unconnected, someone who made you feel important without threatening your ambitions. If I told you who my family was, you would have run. Maybe. Or maybe I would have seen it as an opportunity. To use me. To leverage my connections. That's worse, Adrien." "I know." He rubbed his face. "I'm not trying to justify it. I'm trying to understand how I spent 7 years with someone and missed so much. You saw what you wanted to see. We both did. What did you see? Someone different from my world. Someone who wanted me for me. Not for my last name or my father's power. I was wrong too." They sat in silence for a moment. Around them, the coffee shop hummed with ordinary life. Students studying, business meetings, first dates, normal people living normal lives that neither of them would ever have. "Victoria won't take my calls," Adrien said finally. "Her father blacklisted me from every major firm in the city. I'm working at a startup now making half what I used to. My apartment is a quarter the size. Everything I built just evaporated. I'm sorry." "Are you? Really?" Lena thought about it. "I'm sorry you're hurting. I'm not sorry you're learning consequences exist." "That's fair." He laughed, but it sounded broken. "Is there any chance, could you maybe talk to Dante? Ask him to back off? I'm not a threat to anyone. I just want my life back." And there it was, the real reason for this meeting. "No." "Lena, no. You don't get to ask me for favors, Adrien. You don't get to use the connection you spent 7 years ignoring. Dante isn't doing this to you. The Ashfords aren't doing this to you. You did this to yourself by not knowing who you married. So what? I'm just supposed to accept that my life is destroyed because I made the mistake of divorcing you? Your life isn't destroyed. It's different. You still have a job, an apartment, your health. You just don't have the status you thought you deserved. Welcome to how the rest of the world lives." She stood up to leave. "I loved you," Adrien said. "Maybe I was bad at showing it. Maybe I took you for granted. But I did love you." Lena looked down at him, saw the desperation in his face, the hope that maybe if he said the right words, she'd fix everything for him. "I know you did, in your own way. But love isn't enough when respect isn't there. And you never respected me, Adrien. You respected what I could do for you. There's a difference." She left him sitting there, didn't look back. That evening, she told Dante about the meeting. "He wanted you to call me off." "How did you know?" "Because that's what men like him do. They charm, they plead, they try to manipulate their way out of consequences. Did you agree?" "No." "Good." Dante poured them both wine. "He's not your problem anymore, Lena. He made his choices. Let him live with them. Part of me feels guilty." "Why?" "Because I brought this into his life. He didn't know what he was signing up for when he married me. He didn't know because he didn't ask. That's not your fault. That's his willful ignorance." Dante handed her a glass. "You can't spend your life protecting people from their own stupidity, especially not people who hurt you." She knew he was right. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally were different animals. The next month passed in a blur of learning Alessandro's systems, managing staff, navigating the complex politics of running a business that was partly legitimate and partly money laundering infrastructure. Lena found she was good at it, better than good. The skills she'd learned in business school, the ones she'd let atrophy during her marriage, came rushing back with a vengeance. She also found she didn't hate it as much as she thought she would. Yes, some of what they did was illegal, but most of it was just business. Good business, run efficiently, providing jobs and services and value. The illegal parts happened around the edges, in the margins, and she convinced herself that managing them cleanly was better than letting them run chaotic. It was a rationalization. She knew that. But it was a rationalization she could live with. 2 months after the divorce papers were signed, she received a package. No return address, delivered by courier to Alessandro's during lunch rush. Inside was a photograph. Adrien and Victoria, having lunch together at an outdoor cafe. Talking. Smiling. Victoria's hand on his arm. There was no note. Lena stared at the photograph for a long time. Then she burned it in the restaurant's fireplace and got back to work. That night, Dante asked if she'd seen it. You sent it. I thought you should know he's still trying. Victoria's been meeting with him against her father's wishes. They think they're being discreet. Are they? Nothing is discreet from me. What are you going to do about it? Nothing, unless you want me to. Lena thought about it. Thought about Adrien. Still chasing the life he'd wanted. Still convinced he could charm his way back into Victoria's good graces. Thought about Victoria, making the same mistake Lena had made, believing love could overcome fundamental incompatibilities. Let them, she said finally. If Victoria wants to marry him despite her father's objections, that's her choice. I'm done caring about Adrien's future. You're sure? I'm sure. He's irrelevant, and I'm tired of giving him power over my emotions. Dante smiled. Now you sound like a Moretti. That weekend, Vincent called a family meeting. Bigger than the dinner, more formal. Everyone who mattered in the organization gathered in the conference room of one of their legitimate office buildings, a real estate company that served as headquarters for operations that had nothing to do with property. Lena sat between Dante and Uncle Tony, watching her father command the room with the ease of long practice. We've had a good quarter, Vincent said. Revenue is up across all divisions. Our political connections remain solid, law enforcement attention is minimal, we're positioned well moving forward. Murmurs of approval around the table. However, Vincent continued, we have some challenges on the horizon. The Castellano family is expanding into territory that's traditionally been ours. Nothing aggressive yet, just testing boundaries. We need to decide how to respond. Discussion erupted. Some argued for immediate confrontation, showing strength. Others counseled patience, watching and gathering intelligence before committing. Lena listened, learning the rhythms of how decisions got made, who deferred to whom, where the real power lay beneath the official hierarchy. Lena, Vincent said suddenly, you're quiet. What do you think? Every eye in the room turned to her. She took a breath. I think immediate confrontation is what they're expecting. They're testing us, which means they're ready for us to push back. So we don't. We let them expand into our territory? One of the older men asked incredulously. No, we expand into theirs, quietly, through legitimate business acquisitions that look like normal market competition. By the time they realize what we're doing, we'll have established positions that are legally defensible and economically sound. Silence. Then Vincent smiled. Interesting. Dante? It could work. Slow, but sustainable. And if it goes wrong, we're just businesses competing, not families at war. Tony? Her uncle nodded slowly. I like it. Less risk, better optics. Though we'd need good intelligence on their operations to know where to position ourselves. The discussion shifted to logistics, implementation, timeline. But Lena had passed some kind of test. She could feel it in the way people looked at her differently now, like she'd transformed from Vincent's wayward daughter into someone worth listening to. After the meeting, Dante pulled her aside. That was impressive. It was common sense. Common sense isn't common in this world. Most people default to violence because it's simpler than strategy. You just proved you can think 3 moves ahead. My father looked proud. He was. For Vincent Moretti, that's practically a declaration of love. They went back to the apartment. Lena changed into comfortable clothes and made tea while Dante worked through emails. It had become routine. this domestic rhythm they'd fallen into. Not quite marriage, not quite dating, something in between that worked because neither of them pushed it to be more than it was. Adrien and Victoria got engaged, Dante said without looking up from his laptop. Lena's hand stilled on her mug. When? This afternoon. Small ceremony, just immediate family. Richard Ashford is furious, apparently. Cut Victoria off financially. She chose him anyway. Looks like it. Lena waited for the surge of emotion, jealousy, anger, something. But all she felt was a distant curiosity about two people whose lives no longer intersected with hers. Good for them, I guess. You mean that? I mean, I don't care anymore. Adrien wanted a certain kind of life. He found someone willing to sacrifice for it. They deserve each other. Dante closed his laptop. You really are over it. I really am. He moved to sit next to her on the couch, close enough that their shoulders touched. What about us? Are you over the idea that this is temporary? I don't know what this is. It's whatever we make it. We're engaged. We've been engaged for over a decade, technically, but that was arranged, decided by other people. What I'm asking is if you want this us for real. Lena looked at him. Really looked. Past the dangerous reputation and the family name and the power he represented. Saw the man who'd kept her apartment untouched for 7 years, who'd given her space to grieve a marriage that never should have happened, who'd offered her power instead of demanding she diminish herself. I want to build something, she said carefully. I want to prove I can exist in this world on my own terms, not just as someone's daughter or fiancé. Can you give me time to do that before we make this official? How much time? I don't know, 6 months, a year. However long it takes to know I'm choosing you, not running from Adrien. Dante considered this. Okay, but I want you to know something. What? I'm not Adrien. I'm not going to spend our marriage making you feel small so I can feel big. I'm not going to pretend your strength threatens mine. If we do this, we do it as equals, or we don't do it at all. Equals in a world where women are barely allowed in the room during business meetings? Equals in our marriage. The rest of the world can catch up or get out of the way. It was, Lena thought, the most romantic thing anyone had ever said to her, not because it was poetic, but because it was true. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Outside, the city hummed with its endless noise. Inside, for the first time since she'd signed those divorce papers, Lena felt like she might actually know where she was going. 3 months later, Lena stood in the office above Alessandro's, staring at financial records that didn't make sense. She'd been over the numbers 6 times, cross-referencing receipts with deposits, inventory orders with sales figures, and the discrepancies kept getting worse instead of better. Someone was stealing, and they were good at it. She picked up her phone, called Dante. We have a problem. He arrived 20 minutes later, taking the stairs 2 at a time. She'd never seen him rush before. It did something strange to her chest, the realization that when she called, he came. Show me. She spread the spreadsheets across her desk. Here and here. Someone's skimming cash before it gets deposited. Small amounts, never enough to trigger obvious red flags, but consistent. Over the last 6 months, we're missing close to $70,000. Dante studied the numbers in silence, his jaw tightening. Who has access to the register? 4 people. Marco, the day manager, his assistant Teresa, and 2 servers who've been here for years, Angela and Dominic. You trust them? I thought I did. Lena pulled up another file. But look at this. The discrepancy started exactly 2 weeks after Marco's girlfriend moved in with him. Girlfriend who, according to background I ran this morning, has a gambling problem and $20,000 in credit card debt. You ran background on his girlfriend? I ran background on everyone. You taught me that. Something shifted in Dante's expression. Not quite pride, but close. What do you want to do? I want to confront him. But Uncle Tony says I should handle these things quietly, so I'm asking what the protocol is. Do I fire him? Do I involve Vincent? Do I... Stop. Dante held up a hand. This is your restaurant, your operation. What do you want to do? The question hung between them. This wasn't Dante telling her what to do or Vincent commanding from on high. This was him asking what she thought was right. I want to give him a chance to explain. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's something I'm missing. And if you're not wrong, then I want him gone. But I want to do it clean, severance, good reference, no broken bones. He made a stupid choice, probably under pressure. That doesn't mean he deserves to disappear into the river. Dante's smile was slight but genuine. You're nothing like your father. Is that a compliment? It's an observation. Vincent would have had Marco in a basement by now, finding out exactly how much he took and exactly how much pain it would take to get it back. You're thinking about his girlfriend's gambling problem and giving second chances. That's weakness, isn't it, in this world? No, it's different. Whether it's weakness or strength depends on what happens next. They called Marco up to the office. He came in wiping his hands on his apron, smiling like he didn't have a care in the world. That smile died when he saw both of them waiting. Marco, sit down. He sat. Lena watched his eyes dart to the spreadsheets on her desk, watched calculation happen behind them. He knew. Before she said a word, he already knew he was caught. $70,000, Lena said quietly. Over 6 months. Small amounts, consistent pattern. Want to tell me where it went? Marco's face went through several expressions: denial, defiance, fear, resignation. He settled on exhaustion. It's not what you think. Then explain it to me. My girlfriend, Sarah. She's got a problem, gambling. I thought I could help her, thought if I just paid off the debt, she'd stop. But it kept getting worse. The people she owed, they weren't the kind you negotiate with. They wanted their money or they wanted her, so I took it. $70,000. I was going to pay it back, I swear. I had a plan. I was going to... Marco. Dante's voice cut through the explanation like a knife. Stop lying. You weren't going to pay it back. You were going to keep taking until you got caught or until Sarah gambled away everything you gave her, which is exactly what happened. Silence. I'm sorry, Marco said finally. I know that doesn't mean anything. I know I'm fired, but I'm sorry. This place, this job, it was the best thing I ever had. And I ruined it for someone who doesn't even appreciate what I did. Lena leaned back in her chair. Where's Sarah now? Gone. Took off 3 days ago, with what was left of the money. I came home from work and she'd cleared out. Didn't even leave a note. Who does she owe? Russians. Small-time operation working the casino boats. But they're not small-time about collecting. Dante looked at Lena. She understood the unspoken question. This could go one of two ways, clean or complicated. Fire Marco and let him deal with the Russians on his own, or handle it and create obligation. The first was safer. The second was how you built loyalty. How much does she still owe? Lena asked. Marco blinked. What? How much? Still owed to the Russians. Maybe 15,000, but you can't. I can do whatever I want. This is my restaurant. She pulled out a ledger, made a notation. Consider it a loan. You'll pay me back, with interest, 10% of every paycheck until we're square. That should take about 4 years. Lena, Dante started, and you're demoted, no more manager position. You'll work the floor, back to serving tables. Teresa gets promoted to day manager. You report to her. Understood? Marco stared at her like she'd spoken a language he didn't understand. You're not firing me? You stole from me. You betrayed my trust. You put this entire operation at risk because you couldn't say no to a woman who was using you. So no, you don't get to keep your position, but you also don't get thrown out with nothing. You get a chance to make it right. Why? Good question. Lena looked at Dante, who was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Because everyone deserves one chance to fix their mistakes. You don't get a second one. If you steal again, if you screw up again, if you even think about betraying this family again, there won't be a conversation. There will just be consequences. Are we clear? Yes, absolutely. Thank you. I won't. Get out and send Teresa up here. Marco left so fast he nearly tripped over his own feet. The door closed behind him. Dante stood up, moved to the window overlooking the dining room below. That was interesting. That was stupid, Lena said. Right? I should have fired him, should have made an example. Maybe. Or maybe you just earned more loyalty from every person in this restaurant than Vincent's earned from fear in 40 years. He turned to look at her. They're all going to know what you did, how you handled it, and they're going to remember that when it matters. Or they're going to think I'm soft, easy to manipulate. Let them try. You gave Marco one chance. That doesn't mean you're giving everyone unlimited chances. It means you're fair. In this world, fair is revolutionary. Teresa came up, nervous, until Lena explained the promotion. Then nervous for different reasons. You think I can handle it? I know you can. Marco's good with people, but terrible with responsibility. You're the opposite. This place needs someone who can manage operations without stealing to fund their girlfriend's bad habits. Right. Okay. I can do this. I know you can. That night, word spread through the organization about what Lena had done. The reactions were mixed. Some thought she'd shown weakness. Others thought she'd shown wisdom. Vincent called her into his office the next morning. You handled the situation at Alessandro's. Not a question. Of course he knew. Vincent always knew. Yes. Dante tells me you gave Marco a second chance, paid off his debt to the Russians. I gave him the opportunity to pay off his debt. There's a difference. Is there? Vincent leaned back in his chair, studying her. In my experience, thieves stay thieves. You're just delaying the inevitable. Maybe. Or maybe I'm creating loyalty that can't be bought. Everyone in that restaurant knows I could have made Marco disappear. Instead, I gave him a path back. That means something. It means they'll think they can steal from you and get away with it. It means they'll know I'm not my father. The words came out sharper than she intended. Vincent's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. No, you're not. He stood up, moved to the window. Outside, the city stretched out below them. His city, built on decisions harder than the one she'd made. Your mother used to say the same thing, that fear only bought temporary loyalty. That respect had to be earned through fairness. He never talked about her mother. This was twice in a handful of months. Was she right? She was right about a lot of things. She was also dead at 51, killed by cancer that probably came from the stress of this life. So I don't know if being right matters when the cost is that high. Lena didn't know what to say to that. Vincent had loved her mother, in his way, but he'd also loved power more, had chosen the organization over her mother's repeated requests to retire, to disappear, to choose something safer. I'm not her. No. You're something neither of us was. You're stubborn like me and fair like her, and I have no idea if that's going to get you killed or make you unstoppable. He turned back to her. Just don't mistake fairness for weakness. This world will eat you alive if you give it the chance. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, you're making the same mistakes your mother made, getting attached, caring too much about people who don't matter. They matter to me. Then you're going to get hurt. Maybe not today. Maybe not this year. But eventually, someone you trust is going to betray you, and you're going to have to decide if your principles matter more than your survival. He dismissed her without another word. Lena left feeling like she'd failed some test she hadn't known she was taking. That evening, Dante found her at Alessandro's, going through inventory in the storage room like the conversation with Vincent hadn't happened. Your father called me. Let me guess. He thinks I'm weak. He thinks you're dangerous. To yourself mostly, but also to the way things have always been done. Dante pulled up a crate, sat down. He's not wrong, you know, about this world. It doesn't reward compassion. Then maybe this world needs to change. Maybe. Or maybe you need to decide if you're trying to survive in this world or reform it, because those are two different battles. Lena set down her clipboard. What do you think I should have done? With Marco. I think you did exactly what your instincts told you to do. Whether that's right or wrong depends on what happens next. If Marco stays loyal, you look like a genius. If he screws up again, you look like a fool. That's leadership. That's a gamble. Everything in this life is a gamble. You're just betting on people instead of violence. It's riskier, but the payoff is higher. You sound like you approve. I sound like I'm watching you become who you're supposed to be instead of who everyone else wants you to be. That's different from approval. That's respect. The words settled between them like something solid. Respect. Not love, not affection, not even trust yet, but respect, which in this world might matter more. 2 weeks later, the Russians showed up. Lena was closing Alessandro's when 3 men walked in, 10 minutes after the last customer had left. They didn't look like customers. They looked like men who broke things professionally. We're closed, she said calmly. Behind her, she heard Marco freeze in the kitchen doorway. We're looking for Marco Benedetti, the largest one said. His accent was thick, his smile non-existent. He works here, yes? Not anymore. Where is he? I have no idea. Fired him 2 weeks ago for stealing. Hasn't been back since. The lie came easily. Marco was in the kitchen, had been working his demotion shift, but these men didn't need to know that. His girlfriend Sarah, she owes money, a lot of money. We thought maybe Marco helps her pay. If he did it with money he stole from me, which I've already reported to the police. Another lie, but a useful one. Whatever Marco's involved in, it's not my problem. The Russian took a step closer. Maybe we make it your problem. The kitchen door swung open. Dante walked out with 4 men behind him, all wearing expressions that suggested breaking bones was just a Tuesday night activity. Is there a problem here, Lena? She'd texted him the moment the Russians walked in. He'd been 3 blocks away at another property. The fact that he'd brought backup meant he'd expected this. The Russians reassessed the situation quickly. 3 of them, 5 on Dante's side, and everyone in this city knew who Dante Moretti was. No problem, the large Russian said carefully. Just looking for someone who owes money. And you were told they don't work here anymore. So I suggest you leave before this becomes uncomfortable for everyone. They left. But the largest one paused at the door. Tell Marco we know where to find him. Sarah's debt is his now. The door closed. Lena exhaled slowly, realizing her hands were shaking. Marco emerged from the kitchen, pale as paper. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. I didn't think they'd come here. I thought... How much does Sarah actually owe? Dante asked. 15,000, like I said. Wrong. Try again. Marco's face crumbled. 30, maybe 40. She kept gambling, kept losing. I didn't know how bad it was until she left. $40,000. Lena felt rage building in her chest. You told me 15. I was embarrassed. I thought I could handle it. Thought you could what? Keep stealing from me? Hope I wouldn't notice? No, I was going to tell you. I just needed time to figure out time. Lena laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. You're out of time, Marco. Those men don't care about your excuses. They care about their money. And now they think I'm involved because you work here. I'll quit. I'll leave the city. You'll do exactly what I tell you to do. She looked at Dante. Can you make this go away? The debt? All of it. The Russians, the debt, the whole problem. Dante considered this. Yes, but it won't be cheap, and it won't be clean. These aren't the kind of people who negotiate. They're the kind who send messages. What kind of message? The permanent kind. Marco made a sound like something dying. Please, please don't. I know I screwed up, I know I lied, but please don't kill anyone because of me. Shut up, Lena said. Then to Dante. Other options? We pay the debt. 40,000 plus interest, whatever they're charging. Make it clear that Marco is under our protection and any future contact goes through me. They'll back off because picking a fight with the Morettis over 40,000 isn't worth it. That's a lot of money for someone who lied to me. Yes. I should fire him. Yes. I should let the Russians have him. Probably. She looked at Marco trembling against the kitchen doorway, a man who'd made bad choice after bad choice for a woman who didn't care about him. You're fired. Okay, I understand. But the debt gets paid, not because you deserve it, because those men came into my restaurant and threatened me, and that's not acceptable. She turned to Dante. Handle it. Make it clear that anyone who walks into my business making threats will regret it. Lena, I'm serious. I gave Marco a second chance and he threw it away. Fine, that's on him. But this restaurant, these employees, this operation, that's mine. And anyone who threatens it threatens me. Dante smiled. Not the thin, dangerous smile she'd seen him use on enemies. A real smile, like she'd finally said something he'd been waiting to hear. Now you sound like a Moretti. Marco left that night with a severance check and a warning that if Lena ever saw him again, Dante's protection ended. The Russians got their money the next day, delivered by 2 of Dante's men with an explanation of who Marco belonged to and what would happen if they came back. Word spread fast. Lena Moretti had teeth. She'd shown mercy until mercy became weakness. Then she'd shown exactly what family she belonged to. The next family meeting, the men in the room looked at her differently. Less like Vincent's wayward daughter, more like someone who understood how the game was played. Vincent said nothing, but Uncle Tony pulled her aside afterward. Your father's proud of you. He has a funny way of showing it. He's Vincent Moretti. He shows pride by not actively disapproving. That's as good as it gets. Tony handed her a folder. He wants you to handle this. Inside was information on a new restaurant opportunity. Prime location, struggling ownership, perfect for acquisition. He's giving me another restaurant? He's giving you more responsibility. Alessandro's runs clean now. The Marco situation proved you can handle problems without creating bigger problems. That's rare. Lena took the folder, felt the weight of it, literal and metaphorical. More responsibility meant more visibility. More ways to fail, but also more ways to prove herself. Tell him I'll look it over. Tell him yourself. He's waiting in his car. Vincent was indeed waiting, reading something on his tablet in the back of a black Mercedes. He looked up when Lena knocked on the window. Get in. She slid into the seat beside him. The car smelled like leather and expensive cologne. The Marco situation. I handled it. You handled it expensively, $40,000 for a thief who lied to you. I handled it permanently. The Russians won't come back. The other employees saw what happens when you cross me, and Marco's gone. Problem solved. At significant cost. Sometimes cost is worth it for the message it sends. Vincent was quiet for a moment. Then he closed his tablet. Your mother used to say something similar. That reputation was worth investing in. That how you handled one situation determined how people approached every situation after. Was she right? I don't know. She died before we found out. He looked at Lena directly. But you're betting she was. You're betting that showing strength after showing mercy makes both more powerful. It's an interesting theory. It's not a theory. It's a strategy. Then execute it. Take the new restaurant. Build something that proves you can do this consistently, not just once. Show me I'm right to trust you with more responsibility. The car door opened. The conversation was over, but Lena sat there for a moment longer. Why now? After 7 years of pretending I didn't exist, why bring me back into the family business now? Vincent's expression softened fractionally. Because you came back on your own. I didn't force you. I didn't manipulate you. You chose this life after experiencing the alternative. That makes you more valuable than someone who never had a choice. It was the closest thing to an explanation she was going to get. She took it. The new restaurant was called Marcello's, and it was a disaster. Previous ownership had run it into the ground through bad management, worse decisions, and a health code violation that nearly shut them down permanently. Lena spent 2 weeks just understanding how deep the problems went before she could start fixing them. She hired new staff, renovated the kitchen, changed the menu from overpriced mediocrity to affordable quality, implemented systems that made theft and skimming nearly impossible, and slowly, painfully, Marcello's started turning around. It took 6 months. 6 months of 16-hour days, of managing crisis after crisis, of learning that running one restaurant well didn't mean running 2 restaurants well. But eventually, Marcello's stabilized, started making money, started getting reviews that mentioned the food instead of the violations. Lena barely saw Dante during those 6 months. They talked on the phone, texted, but he was handling his own operations, and she was drowning in hers. The engagement that had felt inevitable started feeling hypothetical, something that would happen eventually, but not anytime soon. Then one night, Dante showed up at Marcello's at closing. She was in the office doing paperwork, exhausted, running on coffee and spite. "Hey," he said from the doorway. She looked up, surprised. "What are you doing here?" "I missed you. You saw me 3 days ago at the family meeting." "That's not the same thing." He came in, closed the door behind him. "When's the last time we had an actual conversation that wasn't about business?" Lena thought about it, couldn't remember. "See?" Dante pulled up a chair. "We're engaged, but we barely see each other. We live in the same apartment, but we might as well be roommates. This isn't what I want." "What do you want?" "I want to set a date. For the wedding. I want to stop pretending this is temporary and start building something permanent. I want to wake up next to you and know you're not going to disappear into some restaurant for 16 hours. I can't just abandon Marcello's. It's still fragile, still... I'm not asking you to abandon anything. I'm asking you to make us a priority the same way you make the restaurants a priority. To choose this relationship instead of letting it exist in whatever time you have left over." Lena set down her pen. "You think I'm avoiding you? I think you're avoiding commitment. Again. Different reasons than with Adrien, but same result." The words hit harder than they should have, maybe because they were true. I'm scared, she admitted. Of what? Of this. Of us. Of building a life with you and then having it fall apart the way it did with Adrien. Of losing myself in marriage again. I'm not Adrien. I know, but I'm still the same person who thought love was enough the first time, who walked away from power for a man who didn't appreciate it. What if I make the same mistake again? Dante leaned forward, took her hands. You won't, because I'm not asking you to walk away from anything. I'm asking you to walk toward something, toward us, toward a partnership where neither of us has to shrink to make the other feel important. You make it sound simple. It's not simple. It's terrifying. But it's also what I want. And unless I'm completely wrong, it's what you want too. You're just too scared to admit it. He wasn't wrong. Lena had spent months convincing herself she needed more time, needed to prove herself, needed to establish independence before committing to marriage again. But really, she was just scared. Scared of being vulnerable, scared of trusting someone completely, scared of choosing wrong. 6 months, she said. What? Give me 6 months to get Marcello's running smoothly, to hire someone I trust to manage it so I'm not there every day. Then we'll set a date. Plan the wedding. Do this right instead of rushing into it. 6 months. I need to know I can handle both, the business and the marriage. If I can't, then I need to figure that out before we make this permanent. Dante studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay, 6 months. But, Lena, yeah? If you're using this time to find another excuse to run, tell me now, because I'll wait 6 months for you if you're actually planning to show up. I won't wait 6 months to watch you disappear again. I'm not running. I'm just being careful. There's a difference between careful and scared. I know. I'm both. He kissed her then, soft and certain, like he was sealing a promise. When he pulled back, his smile was crooked. 6 months. I'm holding you to it. I know. After he left, Lena sat in her office staring at the paperwork that suddenly seemed less important than it had an hour ago. She'd spent 6 months building Marcello's, proving she could succeed. But success in business wasn't the same as success in life. And maybe it was time to figure out if she could have both. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I heard you're doing well. The restaurants are successful. You're making a name for yourself. I'm proud of you. Adrien. She stared at the message for a long time. Then she deleted it without responding. Some doors, once closed, didn't need to be reopened. But part of her wondered what he'd think if he could see her now. Not the quiet wife who'd baked cakes and swallowed insults, but the woman running multiple operations, commanding respect in a world that didn't give it freely. Would he have loved this version of her? Or would he have been just as threatened, just as determined to make her small? It didn't matter. Adrien was the past. Dante was the future. And the woman she was becoming belonged to neither of them. She belonged to herself. 6 months, she'd promised. 6 months to prove she could balance power and partnership, business and love, independence and commitment. 6 months to become the woman who deserved the life she was building. She picked up her phone, texted Dante back. 6 months, I promise. His response came immediately. I know you do. That's why I'm waiting. The text from Dante came through at 2 a.m, 4 months into the 6-month promise Lena had made. She was still at the new restaurant, going through supplier invoices that didn't add up, when her phone buzzed. Turn on the news. Channel 7. She found a tablet, pulled up the local station. Breaking news banner, helicopter footage, a reporter standing outside what looked like a hotel. The Ashford Continental, one of Richard Ashford's flagship properties downtown. Federal agents raided the Ashford Continental tonight in what sources describe as a major investigation into money laundering and tax evasion. Richard Ashford, CEO of Ashford Hotels, was taken into custody along with several executives. The investigation has reportedly been ongoing for 18 months. Lena watched the footage of Richard being led out in handcuffs, Victoria standing on the sidewalk looking stunned, Adrien nowhere in sight. She called Dante back. Did you know about this? I knew the Ashfords had problems. Didn't know it was this bad or this close to breaking. Adrien's going to think we did this. Let him think whatever he wants. We didn't tip off the feds. We didn't need to. The Ashfords were sloppy. That's why we never did serious business with them. Lena watched Victoria on the screen. watched her father being pushed into a federal vehicle, watched the life she'd chosen implode in real time. She gave up everything for him, her father, her family's approval, their money, and now this. You feel sorry for her. I feel sorry for anyone who sacrifices that much for someone who isn't worth it. I've been there. Adrien wasn't worth it. Doesn't mean she's not better off without her father's empire. If it was built on criminal enterprise, we'd have touched. He had a point. The Morettis might be criminals, but they were smart criminals. Everything illegal happened through enough layers of legitimate business that connecting dots required evidence nobody could gather. The Ashfords, apparently, had been less careful. The news played footage on repeat for the next week. Richard Ashford denied everything. Federal prosecutors laid out a case involving shell corporations, offshore accounts, and systematic fraud dating back 15 years. Victoria was photographed leaving the courthouse looking 20 years older than she had at the gala where Lena had first seen her with Adrien. Adrien, for his part, stayed invisible. No statements, no interviews, no public appearances. Smart, Lena thought. Nothing he could say would help, and anything he did say could be used against Victoria or her father. 2 weeks after the raid, Victoria called Lena directly. The number came up unknown, but when Lena answered, Victoria's voice was unmistakable. I know I have no right to ask you for anything. Then don't. I need advice. Not legal advice. I have lawyers for that. But advice from someone who understands what it's like when your entire world collapses and you have to figure out who you are in the wreckage. Lena leaned back in her office chair, surprised by the honesty. Where's Adrien? Gone. Left the day after the raid. Said he couldn't be associated with this kind of scandal. Said it would destroy any chance he had of rebuilding his career. Of course he did. I defended him. To my father. To everyone. I gave up everything for him. And the moment things got hard, he disappeared, just like you said he would. I didn't say that exactly. You said he'd never respect me. That he was using me for status. You were right. Victoria's voice cracked. I'm sitting in a hotel room, not one of ours, obviously, with nothing. My father's assets are frozen. I can't access my trust fund. I'm 29 years old and I have less than $3,000 to my name because everything else is tied up in legal proceedings. What do you want from me? I want to know how you did it. How you walked away from Adrien and built a life anyway. How you survived when everything you thought you knew turned out to be wrong. Lena thought about the question. About the years she'd spent rebuilding herself, proving she could exist in a world that had no patience for weakness. About the choices that had led her from that anniversary dinner to this office, this life, this version of herself. You stop waiting for someone to save you. You stop believing that the right person or the right circumstances will fix everything. You figure out what you're actually good at and you build from there. I'm not good at anything. I've spent my entire life being Richard Ashford's daughter. I don't have skills, I don't have experience, I don't have anything except a name that's now associated with federal crime. Then you learn skills. You get experience. You become someone other than your father's daughter. How? However you can. You take whatever job you can get, even if it's beneath what you think you deserve. You learn to budget $3,000 like it's the only money you'll ever see. You stop expecting the world to care about your problems and start solving them yourself. Silence on the other end. Then Victoria laughed, but it sounded broken. That's harsh. That's reality. You want me to tell you it's going to be easy? That someone's going to swoop in and fix your life? I can't do that. Nobody's coming to save you, Victoria. Not me, not some new boyfriend, not some magical opportunity. Just you. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner you can start actually rebuilding. I don't know if I can do this. You can. You just don't want to. There's a difference. You'd rather sit in that hotel room feeling sorry for yourself than face the reality that you're going to have to work harder than you've ever worked in your life just to get to normal. Why are you being so mean? I'm not being mean. I'm being honest. When my marriage ended, I had people who could have made it easier. My father, Dante, the whole Moretti organization ready to welcome me back. But none of that mattered until I decided I was worth saving. You need to decide that too. Victoria was quiet for a long moment. Thank you. For what? For not pretending this is going to be okay. For not giving me empty platitudes. For treating me like I'm capable of handling the truth. You are capable. You're just scared. That's normal. But being scared doesn't mean you get to quit. They talked for another 20 minutes. Lena gave her practical advice, cheap hotels, job search strategies, how to explain a gap in employment when your last position was heiress to a criminal enterprise. It wasn't warm or comforting, but it was useful, and useful mattered more than comforting. After they hung up, Lena sat in her office thinking about the strange parallel of their situations. Both of them had loved men who didn't deserve it. Both of them had sacrificed for relationships that were fundamentally unequal. The difference was Lena had resources when everything fell apart. Victoria had nothing. She called Dante. I just talked to Victoria Ashford. About? Life advice. Her father's arrested, Adrien left her, and she's broke. She wanted to know how to survive it. What did you tell her? The truth. That nobody's coming to save her, and she needs to save herself. That's cold. That's what I needed to hear when I was drowning. Maybe it's what she needs, too. Dante was quiet for a moment. Are you going to help her? What do you mean? I mean, are you going to offer her a job, give her money, make this easier for her? You have that impulse. The same one that made you give Marco a second chance. This is different. Marco worked for me. Victoria is Adrien's ex-fiancée. Victoria is a woman whose life imploded because she chose the wrong person. Same as you did. Same as a lot of people do. The question is whether you see yourself in her enough to help or whether you let her figure it out alone. Lena hadn't thought about it that way. Hadn't considered that helping Victoria might be about more than charity or sympathy, might be about recognizing a younger version of herself and offering the help she hadn't needed, but others might. I'll think about it. That's not a no. It's not a yes either. 3 days later, Lena called Victoria back. Offered her a job hostessing at Marcello's. Minimum wage plus tips. Nothing glamorous, but honest work that came with a regular schedule and the chance to learn the restaurant business from the ground up. Victoria was silent for so long Lena thought she'd hung up. You're serious. Completely serious. You need work. I need someone who can handle difficult customers without falling apart. The hours are hard. The pay isn't great, but it's legitimate and it's available. Why would you do this for me? I'm not doing it for you. I'm doing it because I need a hostess and you need a job. If you're good at it, you keep it. If you're not, you're fired, same as anyone else. When do I start? Monday, 6 p.m. Don't be late. Dante thought she was insane when she told him. You hired Adrien's ex-fiancée to work at your restaurant. I hired someone who needs a job and has customer service experience from attending charity events her whole life. The Adrien connection is irrelevant. Is it? Or are you trying to prove something? Like what? Like you're better than Adrien. More generous, more forgiving, more capable of seeing people as individuals instead of status symbols. Maybe I am better than Adrien. That's not exactly a high bar. Dante laughed. Fair point, just don't let her become another Marco situation. You can't save everyone, Lena. I'm not trying to save her. I'm just giving her the same chance someone gave me. An opportunity to prove herself. Nobody gave you a chance. You earned everything you have. Dante gave me a chance. When I called him that night, he could have told me to handle my own problems. Instead, he sent a car. That was a chance. I'm just paying it forward. Victoria showed up Monday at 5:45, 15 minutes early, wearing clothes that were clearly expensive but trying to look modest. Lena gave her a uniform shirt, showed her the reservation system, explained how seating rotations worked, and how to handle difficult customers. If someone's rude, you stay polite. If someone's drunk, you get security. If someone asks for special treatment because they know me or Dante or anyone in the family, you tell them you'll check with management and then you come get me. Understood? Understood. Victoria was terrible the first week. Too apologetic, too eager to please, too willing to let customers walk over her. But she showed up on time every shift, didn't complain about the work, and gradually started finding her spine. By the third week, she was handling rush periods without panicking. By the second month, she was good enough that other employees stopped treating her like a charity case and started treating her like part of the team. Lena watched from a distance, not interfering unless absolutely necessary. This was Victoria's journey, not hers. All she'd done was open a door. What Victoria did with the opportunity was up to her. Meanwhile, Adrien resurfaced. Not publicly, but through channels. Lena heard through Uncle Tony that he'd moved to Chicago, taken a position at a small investment firm, was keeping his head down and staying out of the news cycle surrounding the Ashford case. She felt nothing hearing the update. Not anger, not satisfaction. not even curiosity. Adrien had become background noise in her life, a footnote to the chapter she'd moved past. He'd wanted status, and he'd chased it at any cost. Now he had neither the status nor the woman who'd sacrificed for him. That was consequence, not revenge. The 6-month deadline Lena had given Dante was approaching fast. 5 months in, she realized Marcello's didn't need her there 16 hours a day anymore. Diana had everything under control, the systems were solid, and Lena's presence was more about habit than necessity. She started coming home earlier, spending evenings with Dante, cooking dinner together, talking about their days like normal people instead of business partners who happened to be engaged. The apartment started feeling less like a temporary arrangement and more like home. One night, Dante brought up the wedding again. "We're 3 weeks from your deadline." "I know." "Are you ready?" Lena thought about it honestly. "I'm terrified. Not of you, not of marriage, but of screwing it up again, of making the same mistakes I made with Adrien." "What mistakes? Being too accommodating, losing yourself trying to make him happy, staying when you should have left?" "All of it." "Lena, look at me." He waited until she did. "I don't want you to accommodate me. I don't want you to lose yourself. And I sure as hell don't want you to stay if you're unhappy. What I want is a partner who challenges me, who calls me out when I'm wrong, who builds her own empire instead of living in mine." "That's what you want now. What about in 5 years, 10 years? When the novelty wears off and you're tired of fighting with someone who disagrees with you? Then we'll have been married 5 or 10 years, which means we've already figured out how to make it work. Stop catastrophizing the future and just tell me, do you want this or not?" "I want this." "Then stop overthinking it and set a date. June. June works. Big wedding or small? Your father will want big. My father will want bigger. Let's split the difference and do medium. Medium it is." It was that simple. After months of anxiety and overthinking and convincing herself she needed more time, the actual decision took less than 5 minutes. Maybe that was the difference between choosing someone from desperation versus choosing someone from certainty. Desperation required justification. Certainty just required honesty. They set the date for June 15th, sent out invitations that looked more like political summons than wedding announcements. Started planning a ceremony that would double as a statement. The Moretti family consolidating power through a marriage that everyone had seen coming since Lena was 17. Carmela called the day after the invitations went out. "So you're actually doing this?" "I'm actually doing this. About time. I was starting to think you'd run again." "I'm done running." "Good. Because Dante deserves someone who stays, and you deserve someone who sees you as more than an accessory." Carmela paused. "I'm sorry I was such a nightmare when you came back. You were protecting your brother. I was being petty and jealous. You left and I stayed and did everything right, and you still got welcomed back like nothing happened. That made me angry." "I get it." "Do you? Because I'm trying to apologize and you're making it really easy, which makes me feel worse." Lena laughed. "How about this? You were awful, I forgive you, and we move forward without rehashing it constantly." "Deal. Do you need help planning this wedding, or are you handling it yourself?" "I could use help. I planned my first wedding in about 20 minutes at a courthouse. This feels more complicated." "It is more complicated, but it'll be beautiful. I promise." Carmela threw herself into wedding planning with the same intensity she brought to everything else. Flowers, venue, catering, music. She handled details Lena didn't have time to think about and didn't care enough to fight over. As long as she married Dante at the end of it, the rest was just performance. 3 months before the wedding, Victoria knocked on Lena's office door at Marcello's. "Do you have a minute?" "Sure, what's up?" Victoria sat down, nervous in a way she hadn't been in months. "I wanted to tell you, before you heard it elsewhere, Adrien called me." Lena kept her expression neutral. "Okay." "He wants to get back together, says he's made mistakes, says he's changed, says Chicago is lonely and he misses what we had." "What did you tell him?" "I told him to lose my number, that I'd spent 6 months learning to exist without him, and I wasn't interested in going backwards. That he'd left when things got hard and he didn't get to come back now that I was rebuilding." "Good for you." "Is it?" "Because part of me wanted to say yes. Part of me still remembers what it felt like when he looked at me like I mattered, before everything fell apart. That part of you is lying. It's remembering what you wanted it to be, not what it actually was." How do you know? Because I did the same thing. After Adrien and I split, I'd remember the good parts and forget everything else. Forget the contempt, the mockery, the way he made me feel small every single day. Our brains do that. Protect us from the full truth of bad situations by highlighting the moments that didn't hurt. Victoria nodded slowly. He said you'd poisoned me against him, that you'd convinced me to throw away something good because of your own bitterness. Do you believe that? No. But he said it like he believed it, like he's rewritten history so completely that he's the victim in every version of the story. That's what people like Adrien do. They can't accept responsibility, so they rewrite the narrative until someone else is always to blame. You, me, his career, circumstances, anything except his own choices. I almost feel sorry for him. Don't. Save your sympathy for people who actually learn from their mistakes. Adrien hasn't learned anything. He's just looking for someone to make him feel important again. Victoria left looking more certain than when she'd arrived. Lena watched her go and felt something like pride. 6 months ago, Victoria would have taken Adrien back, convinced herself his apology was real, fallen into the same pattern. Now she was walking away with her eyes open. That night, Lena mentioned the conversation to Dante. Adrien tried to get Victoria back. Let me guess. She said no. She said no. After thinking about it, but ultimately, no. You sound proud. I am proud. 6 months ago, she was a mess. Now she's making smart choices and standing by them. You did that, gave her a job, showed her what self-respect looks like, let her figure out her own strength. I gave her an opportunity. She did the work. That's what good leadership looks like. Recognizing potential and creating space for people to become who they're capable of being. Lena thought about that. About Marco, who'd screwed up but was slowly earning back trust. About Victoria, who'd gone from heiress to hostess and was building a life from scratch. About the employees at all 3 restaurants who worked harder for her than they probably would for someone who ruled through fear instead of fairness. My father would say I'm too soft, that loyalty bought through kindness is weaker than loyalty bought through fear. Your father built an empire that required constant maintenance to prevent collapse. You're building something different, something that might actually last because people want it to, not because they're scared of what happens if they leave. You think I'm right about the fairness thing. I think you're building the organization Vincent wanted but didn't know how to create. He wanted loyalty and respect. He just didn't realize fear and respect are different things. You do. 2 months before the wedding, Lena got called to a family meeting. Big one. All the senior members, held at one of the downtown offices in a conference room that looked legitimate enough to host actual corporate meetings. Vincent sat at the head of the table, older than Lena remembered, moving slower but still commanding the room with nothing but presence. We have a situation, he said without preamble. The Castellano family is expanding. They're moving into territory we've controlled for 20 years. Nothing aggressive yet, but they're testing boundaries. Discussion erupted around the table. Various voices arguing for immediate retaliation, for strategic positioning, for negotiation. Lena listened, learning the patterns of who deferred to whom, where the real power sat beneath official titles. We push back hard, one of the older men said. Show them what happens when they test us. We wait, another argued. Let them overextend, then cut them off at the knees. Vincent looked at Lena. You've been quiet. Every eye in the room turned to her. I think we're asking the wrong question. What question should we be asking? Why now? The Castellanos have been stable for years. Why suddenly expand into territory they know will cause problems? Either they're desperate or they're being pushed by someone else. We need to know which before we react. That's weak, the first man said. They're testing us. We need to respond with strength. Responding without information is how you end up in wars you didn't need to fight. I'm not saying we don't respond. I'm saying we find out what's actually happening before we commit resources to a fight that might be a distraction from the real problem. Vincent leaned back in his chair. Interesting. Dante, what do you think? I think Lena's right. Intelligence first, action second. We can always escalate. We can't unescalate once we've started. The meeting continued for another hour, but the decision had been made. They'd gather information, watch the Castellanos' movements, figure out what was actually happening before committing to a response. It was strategic instead of reactive, which made some people uncomfortable but ultimately made sense. After the meeting, Vincent pulled Lena aside. You handled that well. Thank you. Most people in this organization react first and think later. You're thinking first. That's rare. It's also dangerous if you think too long and miss the moment to act. I know, it's a balance. It is, and you're learning to find it faster than I expected. He studied her face. You're different from when you left. Harder. More certain. I grew up. You did. The question is whether you grew up into someone who can actually survive in this world or someone who's going to get crushed by it eventually. I guess we'll find out. I guess we will. He started to walk away, then paused. Your mother would be proud. She always wanted you to find your own strength instead of borrowing mine. It was the first time he'd mentioned her mother in years. Lena didn't know what to say, so she just nodded. Vincent left without expecting a response, which was probably better. 1 month before the wedding, everything felt like it was happening too fast and too slow simultaneously. Dress fittings and seating charts and 1,000 decisions that seemed important but weren't. Lena navigated it all while managing 3 restaurants and helping Dante track the Castellanos situation and trying to remember to sleep occasionally. The intelligence they'd gathered on the Castellanos was interesting. They were expanding because a development company was buying up properties in the area, and the Castellanos wanted to control access. It wasn't about the Morettis at all. They were just in the way. So we negotiate, Lena said when Dante showed her the report. We find out what properties they actually need, see if there's a way to accommodate them without giving up anything we can't afford to lose. Or we block the development company and make the problem disappear. That creates different problems. Better to find a solution that works for everyone. They presented the strategy at the next family meeting. Half the room thought it was brilliant. The other half thought it was weakness. Vincent listened to both sides, then sided with Lena. We negotiate, but from a position of strength. Make it clear we're choosing cooperation, not accepting surrender. Dante, set up the meeting. Lena, you handle the terms. Me? You wanted to be taken seriously. Here's your chance. Negotiate a deal that keeps our territory secure and gives the Castellanos what they actually need. If you succeed, you prove you belong at this table. If you fail, we handle it differently. It was a test. Everything with Vincent was a test. Lena spent a week preparing, researching the development company, understanding what properties the Castellanos needed and why, figuring out what the Morettis could trade without weakening their position. By the time the meeting happened, she knew every detail, every potential objection, every possible outcome. The Castellanos brought 4 people. Lena brought Dante and Uncle Tony. They met in a restaurant neither family owned, neutral territory, where conversation could happen without territorial implications. Antonio Castellano sat across from her, 60-something and skeptical. Vincent Moretti sends his daughter to negotiate. No offense, but that seems like an insult. No offense taken. I'm here because I understand what you actually need better than anyone else Vincent could have sent. You're not expanding for expansion's sake. You need control of specific properties for a development deal. I'm prepared to offer you exactly what you need in exchange for assurances that your expansion stops at defined boundaries. She laid out the proposal. 3 blocks the Castellanos wanted, in exchange for pulling back from 2 others and a formal agreement about territorial boundaries moving forward. It wasn't perfect for either side, but it was workable. Antonio studied the proposal in silence. This is reasonable. It's strategic. You get what you need. We keep what matters. Nobody loses face. Nobody starts a war we'd both rather avoid. And if we refuse? Then we block the development deal, make the entire area economically unviable, and neither of us gets anything. But that seems wasteful when there's a better solution available. He smiled. Vincent's daughter, indeed. You have his ruthlessness with better packaging. I'll take that as a compliment. They negotiated details for another hour, but the framework held. By the end of the meeting, they had an agreement. It would be formalized through layers of legitimate business transactions, but the core understanding was solid. Walking out, Dante put his hand on Lena's back. That was impressive. That was exhausting. You just negotiated a territorial agreement that could have turned into a war. Vincent's going to promote you. Vincent's going to test me harder. That's how this works. But she'd passed this test. That mattered. The wedding was 3 weeks away when Lena realized she'd stopped being scared. Not about marriage, that still terrified her. but about failing, about not being enough, about repeating mistakes. She'd spent a year building proof that she could handle this life, and somewhere along the way she'd started believing it herself. She was different from the woman who'd baked an anniversary cake for Adrien, different from the girl who'd run away from obligation at 19. She was someone who negotiated with dangerous people, who managed businesses both legal and otherwise, who'd earned her place at a table that didn't give respect freely. And in 3 weeks, she'd marry Dante. Not because it was arranged, not because she was running from something else, but because they'd built something together that was worth formalizing. That night, lying in bed next to Dante, Lena thought about the strange path that had led her here. "Are you awake?" "Yeah." "Thank you for waiting, for giving me time to figure out who I am before we did this." "You don't have to thank me for that. I want to anyway. Adrien never gave me space to be anything except what he needed. You gave me space to be everything I could be. That matters." Dante pulled her closer. 3 weeks. "You ready?" "Ask me in 3 weeks." But she was ready. Scared, uncertain about the future, aware of all the ways things could go wrong, but ready anyway, because she'd finally learned that ready didn't mean perfect. It meant willing to try. And for the first time in a long time, Lena was willing to try. The 6 months passed faster than Lena expected, and slower than she could stand. She found a manager for Marcello's, a woman named Diana, who'd worked in restaurant management for 15 years and had the kind of no-nonsense competence that made Lena feel safe leaving her in charge. Alessandro's was running like clockwork under Teresa's management. The third restaurant Uncle Tony had given her was still finding its rhythm, but it was profitable and clean, which was all that mattered. Lena had proven she could build something. Now she had to prove she could keep it while building something else. The wedding was planned for June, outdoors at the Moretti estate, because Vincent insisted and Dante didn't care enough to argue. 200 guests, mostly family and associates, the kind of gathering that was half celebration and half political theater. Lena had opinions about the flowers and the music and the menu, but she let Carmela handle most of it because letting Dante's sister feel important was easier than fighting her on every detail. What Lena cared about was the dress. She went alone to find it, which surprised the bridal consultant who clearly expected an entourage. But Lena had learned something over the past year. The most important decisions you made alone, when there was nobody else's voice in your head telling you who to be. She found it in the third shop. Not white, she'd been married before, and white felt like a lie. Instead, a deep cream silk that caught the light like champagne. Simple and elegant, and nothing like the dress she'd worn when she married Adrien in that courthouse ceremony 7 years ago. "It's perfect," the consultant said. Lena stared at herself in the mirror. The woman looking back was someone she barely recognized from a year ago. Stronger. Harder in some ways, but also more certain, less apologetic. "I'll take it." 2 weeks before the wedding, Adrien called. Lena saw his name on her phone screen and almost didn't answer, but curiosity won over common sense. "What do you want, Adrien?" "I heard you're getting married to Dante Moretti. I just wanted to, I don't know, congratulate you? Make sure you're okay?" "I'm fine. More than fine." "Are you happy?" The question surprised her. "Why do you care?" "Because I spent 7 years making you unhappy, and I guess I want to know if someone else succeeded where I failed." Lena walked out onto the balcony of the apartment, watched the city stretch out below. "I'm not happy because of Dante. I'm happy because I finally figured out who I am. Dante's just smart enough to want that person instead of trying to change her." "I didn't try to change you. You didn't try to know me, which is the same thing. You wanted a wife who fit a specific shape, and when I didn't fit anymore, you got a new one. That's not—" He stopped. "Okay, maybe that's fair. How's Victoria, by the way?" "How should I know?" "You're not keeping tabs on us?" "Why would I?" "You're not my problem anymore, Adrien. You haven't been for a long time." Silence on the other end, then, "She left me 3 months ago. Turns out her father was right. I wasn't worth the family drama. She chose them over me." Lena should have felt something. Satisfaction, maybe, or vindication, but all she felt was tired. "I'm sorry." "Are you?" "I'm sorry you keep choosing people who don't choose you back. I'm sorry you spent 7 years with me and learned nothing about how to actually love someone. I'm sorry you're still the same person you were when you handed me divorce papers on our anniversary. Jesus, Lena, I called to congratulate you, not get a psychological evaluation. Then congratulations accepted. Don't call me again. She hung up before he could respond. Blocked his number this time. Should have done it months ago. Some people didn't deserve access to your life, even for closure. Dante found her on the balcony an hour later. He didn't ask who'd called or why she looked angry, just handed her a glass of wine and stood beside her, silent company, until she was ready to talk. Adrien called. Victoria left him. I know. Happened 3 months ago. He's been trying to get her back ever since. You knew and didn't tell me? Why would I? He's irrelevant. What he does or doesn't do doesn't affect our lives. He wanted to know if I was happy. Are you? She turned to look at Dante, really looked at him, this man who'd waited 7 years for her to figure out what she wanted, who'd given her space and resources and respect, who'd never once asked her to be smaller so he could feel bigger. Yes, I'm terrified most of the time, convinced I'm going to screw this up, worried I'm making another mistake. But under all that, yeah, I'm happy. Good, because I'm not letting you back out now. The flowers are ordered, the caterer's been paid, and your father will probably have me killed if we cancel at this point. She laughed, surprised by it. Is that the only reason you're marrying me? Fear of Vincent Moretti? That and the fact that I'm completely in love with you, but mostly the fear thing. You've never said that before. Said what? That you love me. Dante set down his wine glass. I've loved you since you were 17 and told my father that arranged marriages were outdated, patriarchal bullshit. I've loved you through 7 years of you being gone. I've loved you through every bad decision and every moment of growth this past year. I just figured you weren't ready to hear it. And now? Now we're 2 weeks from getting married. Seemed like good timing. Lena kissed him, long and certain, tasting wine and honesty and a future that didn't terrify her quite as much as it had yesterday. I love you too, for the record. I know, you're terrible at hiding it. The week before the wedding, Vincent called her into his office. Not the family office downtown, but his private study at the estate. The room where he'd told her at 17 that she'd marry Dante Moretti, and that was final. The room where, at 19, she'd told him she was leaving with Adrien and he could disown her if he wanted. He'd aged in the 7 years she'd been gone. Not badly, but noticeably. More gray in his hair, deeper lines around his eyes. 70 wasn't old, but it wasn't young either, and Vincent had lived a hard 70 years. Sit. She sat. Your mother would have liked to see this. You, getting married, finally settling into the life you were born for. She would have liked to see me happy. The marriage is just a bonus. Vincent almost smiled. She'd say something like that. She was always more interested in feelings than strategy. Is that why you never retired? Because she wanted you to and you cared more about strategy? I never retired because this is who I am. Your mother knew that when she married me. She thought she could change me. Thought love was enough to make me choose different. She was wrong. She died thinking you'd chosen the organization over her. I did choose the organization over her, every single day. He poured 2 glasses of scotch, handed her one. That's the truth of this life, Lena. It demands everything, and if you're not willing to give everything, it takes it anyway. That's bleak. That's honest. Your mother wanted me to be something I wasn't. It killed her in the end. Not the cancer, the disappointment. Lena sipped the scotch, felt it burn. Why are you telling me this? Because you're about to marry Dante. And Dante is me, 30 years younger. He's going to choose this life over you when it matters. Not because he doesn't love you, but because this is what he is. And you need to decide if you can live with that. Dante's not you. He's exactly me. Loyal, strategic, willing to make hard choices. The only difference is you're not your mother. You're not going to spend your life trying to change him. You're going to build your own power instead of resenting his. You're right. I'm not my mother. I'm your daughter. Vincent studied her over his glass. Yes, you are. Which is why this marriage might actually work. You understand what it costs to have power. You're willing to pay it. And if I'm not? If I decide I want something different? Then you leave, like you did with Adrien. But this time you'll know exactly what you're walking away from. That's the difference between 19 and 27. At 19, you thought you were escaping. At 27, you know you're choosing. He was right, which made her angry. She'd spent a year convincing herself she'd evolved, grown, become someone new. But Vincent saw through it, saw that she was just making the same choice with open eyes instead of closed ones. I'm choosing Dante, and the family, and the life, all of it. Good. Then take this. He slid a folder across the desk. Your wedding present. Inside were deeds, property deeds. 4 buildings in the commercial district, currently housing legitimate businesses, collectively worth several $1,000,000. What is this? Your insurance policy. They're in your name only, not Dante's, not the family's. Yours. If you ever need to walk away, you'll have resources. If you stay, you'll have assets nobody can touch. Either way, you're not trapped. Lena stared at the deeds, understanding the gesture beneath the strategy. Vincent was giving her the choice his wife never had, the ability to leave if she wanted. He'd caged her mother with love and obligation. He was setting his daughter free with property and independence. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just don't repeat your mother's mistakes. Don't wait until it's too late to realize you chose wrong. I'm not choosing wrong. Then prove it. Build something that lasts. The wedding day arrived with perfect weather and terrible timing. Lena woke up at 5 a.m., couldn't get back to sleep, and ended up making coffee in the kitchen of her childhood bedroom at the estate where she'd spent the night before the ceremony. Tradition, Carmela had insisted, because the bride and groom shouldn't see each other before the wedding. Sophia arrived at 7 with the dress and a team of people to make Lena look like she belonged in a wedding that cost more than most people's houses. Hair, makeup, endless adjustments to the dress that already fit perfectly. Lena endured it because this was the performance required, the visible symbol of family alliance and personal commitment. Carmela appeared around 9, already dressed, already perfect. You look nervous. I am nervous. Don't be. Dante's been waiting for this day for over a decade. He's not going anywhere. That's not what I'm nervous about. Then what? Lena looked at herself in the mirror, hair pinned in elaborate waves, makeup that made her look like an expensive version of herself, dress that cost more than her first car. I'm nervous I'm going to wake up in 5 years and realize I made another mistake, that I chose wrong again. You didn't choose wrong with Adrien. You chose young. There's a difference. Carmela sat down on the bed. Look, I've hated you for years. You know that, right? I got that impression. I hated you because you left. Because you made it look easy to walk away from all of this. Because I've spent my whole life doing exactly what was expected, and you just didn't. And everyone forgave you, welcomed you back like you'd never left. Is there a point to this? The point is you're stronger than I am. You walked away once and survived, which means if this marriage doesn't work, you'll survive that too. So stop being scared of making mistakes and just make choices. At least you're brave enough to choose. It was the nicest thing Carmela had ever said to her, possibly the nicest thing Carmela had ever said to anyone. Thank you. Don't mention it. Seriously, if you tell anyone I was nice to you, I'll deny it. The ceremony was at 4 p.m. 200 guests in formal wear, seated in rows facing an altar decorated with so many flowers Lena couldn't identify half of them. Music played by a quartet that had flown in from New York. Photographers capturing every moment for the family archives and the society pages. Lena walked down the aisle on her father's arm, past faces she knew and faces she didn't. Associates and allies and people who were there because refusing the invitation would have been political suicide. She saw Uncle Tony in the 3rd row, looking proud. Saw her cousins, her aunt, the extended family that had welcomed her back into the fold. And at the end of the aisle, Dante stood waiting. He looked terrified and certain in equal measure, like he couldn't quite believe this was happening, but knew it was exactly right. Vincent handed her off with a nod. No sentimentality, just acknowledgement. Then Lena was standing across from Dante while some officiant who'd been paid very well to ask no questions talked about love and commitment and partnership. Do you take this man? The officiant said, and Lena realized she'd missed half the ceremony lost in her own head. I do. And do you take this woman? I do, Dante said before the officiant finished. You're supposed to wait for the whole question. I've been waiting for over a decade. I'm done waiting. People laughed. The officiant looked flustered but continued. Rings were exchanged, platinum bands that had been custom-made, simple and perfect. And then the officiant was pronouncing them married, and Dante was kissing her like they weren't standing in front of 200 people. The reception was exactly what Lena expected. Excessive food, expensive wine, endless toasts that ranged from genuine to strategic. Vincent gave a speech about family and loyalty that was really about business and obligation. Uncle Tony told embarrassing stories about Dante as a kid that made him look almost human. Carmela's speech was surprisingly warm, which meant she'd had at least 3 glasses of champagne before getting up to talk. Lena and Dante had their first dance to a song neither of them had chosen, but both pretended to love. Then they danced with family members, with associates, with people whose names Lena would forget by tomorrow, but whose presence mattered today. Around 9 p.m., they escaped to a quiet corner of the garden. Lena's feet hurt from the heels, her face hurt from smiling, and she wanted nothing more than to get out of the dress and into something that didn't cost 5 figures. "How are you holding up?" Dante asked. "Ask me in the morning. Right now I'm running on adrenaline and champagne." "We could leave, make an exit, head to the hotel, skip the rest of this." "Your father would kill us. My father would help hide the bodies." "Fair point." He pulled her close, swayed to music that was barely audible from here. "I meant what I said earlier. I've been waiting for this since we were kids, and it was worth the wait." "Even the 7 years I spent married to someone else?" "Even those, because they made you who you are now, and who you are now is exactly who I want to spend my life with." Lena rested her head on his shoulder. "I'm going to screw this up sometimes. Make bad decisions, choose work over you, forget that partnership means actually being present." "I know. And you're going to choose the organization over me when it matters. Put business first. Make calls I don't agree with. Be exactly like my father when I need you to be different." "Probably. So how is this going to work?" "Honestly, I have no idea, but we'll figure it out. That's what people do when they're committed to making something last." They stayed in the garden until someone came looking for them. The cake needed to be cut, apparently, and you couldn't cut the cake without the bride and groom. So they went back into the reception and cut an elaborate 4-tier monstrosity that looked better than it tasted and fed each other bites while cameras flashed. Around midnight, they finally escaped. The hotel suite was ridiculous. More space than anyone needed, a view of the city that stretched for miles, champagne waiting on ice that neither of them wanted. Lena got out of the dress with Dante's help, put on the silk pajamas she'd packed, and collapsed on the bed. That was exhausting. That was politics. The marriage is the easy part. "You keep saying that, but I'm not convinced." Dante lay down beside her, still in his tuxedo pants and unbuttoned shirt. "We're going to fight. About work, about priorities, about stupid things that don't matter and important things that do. But we're also going to choose each other every single day. That's what makes it work. The choosing." "You sound very certain." "I am certain. About you, about us, about the fact that we're both too stubborn to let this fail." He was right. They were both stubborn, both driven, both too invested in success to accept failure. Maybe that wasn't romantic, but it was real. And real mattered more than romantic. The next morning, they had breakfast in bed, eggs and toast and coffee that was better than it had any right to be. They talked about the honeymoon they'd planned, 2 weeks in Italy away from family and business and expectations. They talked about the apartment they'd officially move into together when they got back. Neither his nor hers, but theirs. They talked about the future in broad strokes, avoiding details because details could wait. What they didn't talk about was Adrien, or Victoria, or the 7 years Lena had spent in a different life. Those were behind her now, filed away in the part of her brain labeled mistakes that taught me things. She'd loved Adrien once, in the desperate way young people love when they think it's the most important thing in the world. But that kind of love was expensive. It cost you parts of yourself you didn't even know you were trading. This thing with Dante was different. It wasn't desperate or consuming. It was steady. Built on respect and honesty and the understanding that they were both complicated people who'd chosen complicated lives. That didn't make it less real. It made it sustainable. 2 weeks later, they came back from Italy tanned and rested and ready to step back into the rhythm of their lives. Lena went back to her restaurants, found them running smoothly in her absence. Dante went back to his operations, found nothing had burned down while he was gone. They settled into married life with surprising ease, sharing space, sharing meals, sharing the mundane intimacies that built a life together. 3 months after the wedding, Lena got a letter. Hand-delivered to Alessandro's, no return address, Neat handwriting she recognized immediately. It was from Victoria. "I don't know if you'll read this," it began. "I wouldn't blame you if you threw it away, but I wanted you to know that you were right. About Adrien. About what it costs to love someone who doesn't see you. I spent a year defending him to my family, sacrificing my relationship with my father, convinced that love was enough. It wasn't. He's still chasing status, still trying to use me to climb ladders I don't even believe in. I left him. For real this time. And I wanted to thank you for showing me what it looks like to choose yourself over someone who doesn't deserve you." Metrant. Lena read it twice. Then she put it in her desk drawer, unsure what to do with it. Part of her wanted to write back, offer some kind of solidarity or advice, but Victoria's journey wasn't hers to guide. Everyone had to figure out their own path to self-respect. She told Dante about it that night. "You going to respond?" "I don't think so. What would I even say?" "You could tell her it gets easier, that choosing yourself is scary but worth it, that she'll be fine." "Will she?" "Eventually, same way you were eventually fine." Lena thought about that, about the years she'd spent rebuilding herself, proving she could exist in this world, becoming someone she actually liked. It had been hard and messy, and there had been days she'd wanted to quit, but she'd come through it stronger. "Yeah, she'll be fine." 6 months after the wedding, Vincent died. Heart attack in his sleep, which was as peaceful as anyone in his line of work had a right to expect. There was a massive funeral, 3 days of mourning, endless tributes from people who'd feared him, and people who'd loved him, and people who'd done both simultaneously. Lena cried more than she expected. Not for the man who'd arranged her marriage and spent 7 years pretending she didn't exist, but for the father who'd given her property deeds and told her not to repeat her mother's mistakes. For the man who'd been hard and calculating but had loved her in his own limited way. Dante gave the main eulogy, talked about Vincent's leadership and vision and commitment to family. Uncle Tony talked about the early years, building the organization from nothing. Carmela talked about growing up with Vincent as a presence more than a person, feared and respected in equal measure. Lena didn't speak. She'd said everything she needed to say to Vincent while he was alive. The funeral was for everyone else. After the burial, after the reception at the estate, after everyone had left and it was just family, Tony pulled Lena and Dante aside. "We need to talk about succession." "Now?" Lena asked. Vincent left instructions, detailed instructions about how the organization should be structured moving forward. You both need to hear them. They went to Vincent's study, the room that still smelled like his cologne and cigars. Tony pulled out an envelope with Vincent's seal, opened it with hands that shook slightly. "Vincent's will splits leadership. Dante takes operations. Lena takes finances and legitimate businesses. Joint decision-making on anything major. Neither one answers to the other. You answer to the family collectively." Lena stared at Tony. "He's making me co-head of the organization. He's acknowledging that the organization needs both of you. Dante's strategic and ruthless. You're fair and smart. Together you balance each other out. Separately, you'd each make mistakes the other one would catch." "This is going to cause problems," Dante said. "The old guard won't accept Lena in a leadership role. They'll push back, try to undermine her, wait for her to fail." "Let them try," Tony said. Vincent's last instruction was that anyone who couldn't work with the new structure could leave. With his blessing, but without his protection. He was very clear about that. It was a power play from beyond the grave, and it was perfect. Vincent had spent his life consolidating power. In death, he was ensuring it transferred to people who'd keep the organization stable. And by forcing Lena and Dante to work together, he was betting their marriage would keep both of them honest. "Did he say anything else?" Lena asked. Tony handed her a second envelope, this one addressed to her in Vincent's handwriting. "He wanted you to have this. Private." She took it, didn't open it until later that night, alone in Vincent's study while Dante handled some crisis with the Castellano family that couldn't wait, even for mourning. Inside was a letter, short, direct, vintage Vincent. "Lena, if you're reading this, I'm dead. Probably heart attack. Maybe stroke. Hopefully nothing embarrassing. I'm giving you half the organization because you earned it. Not because you're my daughter, but because you're good at this. Better than I expected. You have your mother's fairness and my ruthlessness. That's a rare combination. Use it wisely. Don't let Dante make all the hard calls. He'll choose violence too quickly. Don't let sentiment make you weak. The organization requires strength. Find the balance between both. And remember, power is only worth having if you're willing to use it. Your mother never learned that. Don't make her mistake. Vincent. Lena folded the letter carefully, put it back in the envelope. It wasn't sentimental or warm or anything approaching a traditional deathbed message. But it was honest. And in Vincent's world, honesty was the highest form of love. She kept the letter in her desk at Alessandro's, pulled it out sometimes when decisions got hard, and she needed to remember who she was and why she was doing this. Vincent had given her power, but more importantly, he'd given her permission to use it without apologizing. The first year of joint leadership was exactly as difficult as Dante predicted. The old guard pushed back, tested Lena constantly, waited for her to make mistakes they could capitalize on. She made mistakes. Everyone did. But she also learned fast, adapted, and proved she could make hard calls when necessary. The Marco situation came back to haunt her 6 months into her new role. He'd stayed clean, stayed loyal, paid back his debt like clockwork. Then one of the new associates suggested she was soft, that letting Marco stay after he stole was a sign of weakness. Lena called a meeting, made it clear that mercy and weakness were different things, that she'd given Marco one chance and he'd taken it, which proved her judgment was sound, that anyone who mistook fairness for weakness was welcome to test her and find out exactly how wrong they were. Nobody tested her after that. She and Dante fought sometimes, usually about the same things. He wanted to move fast and aggressive. She wanted to move careful and sustainable. He thought violence solved problems efficiently. She thought violence created new problems. They argued, compromised, and usually found solutions that incorporated both approaches. It wasn't always smooth, but it worked. 2 years after Vincent died, Lena got a call from an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Lena Moretti?" A woman's voice, familiar but distant. "Yes. Who's this?" "Victoria Ashford." "Well, Victoria Patterson now. I got remarried to someone who actually sees me as a partner instead of a status symbol." "Good for you. I'm calling because I saw the news about your father. I know it was a while ago, but I wanted to say I'm sorry for your loss. And I wanted you to know that letter you never responded to? It helped anyway. Just knowing someone else had walked away from a bad situation and survived made it easier to do the same." Lena sat down. "You didn't need my permission to leave, Adrien." "No, but it helped to have proof that leaving was possible, that there was life after making that choice, so thank you for being that proof, even if you didn't mean to be." "You're welcome, I think. Are you happy now?" "I'm getting there. It's messy and hard, and some days I still wonder if I made the right choice. But yeah, I'm happier than I was. That's all any of us can ask for." They talked for another 10 minutes, traded stories about rebuilding lives and learning self-respect, then said goodbye with the understanding that they probably wouldn't talk again. But it felt important, that conversation, like closing a door that had been left open too long. That night, Lena told Dante about it. She remarried someone who sees her as a partner. Good for her. "Do you see me as a partner? Really?" Dante looked up from his laptop. "Are you seriously asking me that? After 2 years of running this organization together? After every fight we've had about strategy and every compromise we've made?" "I'm asking because I need to hear it sometimes, that this is real, that we're equals. We're equals, sometimes you're right, sometimes I'm right, usually we're both partially wrong. But we figure it out together. That's partnership." "Okay." "Okay? That's it?" "That's it. I just needed to hear you say it." 3 years after the wedding, Lena stood in Alessandro's office, staring at financial reports that showed she'd tripled the legitimate business profits while keeping the illegal operations completely clean. She'd built something real, something sustainable, something that would last beyond her. Dante walked in without knocking, which meant either emergency or something he thought was important enough to interrupt. "We need to talk about expansion." "Now?" "The Castellanos want to negotiate territory. They're willing to give us 3 blocks downtown in exchange for us backing off their waterfront operations." "That's a good deal." "It's a great deal, which means they're desperate or planning something. I think we should push harder, take the waterfront too. Or we take the deal, build goodwill, and position ourselves for future negotiations from a place of strength instead of aggression." Dante sat down. "You always want to build goodwill." and you always want to push harder. Somewhere between both is probably the right answer. They argued for 20 minutes, went back and forth about risk versus reward, short-term gains versus long-term strategy. Eventually, they agreed to take the deal, but with additional conditions that gave them leverage if the Castellanos tried anything stupid later. It was compromise. It was partnership. It was marriage in the world they'd chosen. Walking out of the restaurant that night, Lena thought about the woman she'd been 3 years ago. Broken, angry, sitting at a dining table with an anniversary cake and a husband who'd already decided she wasn't enough. That woman would barely recognize the one she'd become. She'd learned that power was something you took, not something you were given. That respect was earned through consistency, not demanded through fear. That fairness and strength weren't opposites, they were complements. That you could be ruthless without being cruel, strategic without being cold. She'd learned that marriage worked when both people chose it every day, when partnership meant balancing each other instead of competing. That love looked different at 27 than it had at 19, less desperate and more solid. She'd learned that sometimes walking away from everything was the only way to figure out what you actually wanted, and sometimes coming back was braver than leaving ever was. Most importantly, she'd learned that she didn't need to choose between power and love, independence and commitment, the person she'd been and the person she wanted to become. She could be all of it, complicated, flawed, strong, fair, ruthless when necessary, and merciful when possible. Adrien had wanted her to be simple. Dante wanted her to be herself. That was the difference between a marriage that suffocated and one that sustained. Lena got home to find Dante already there, cooking dinner, something he did maybe twice a year when he was thinking through problems and needed his hands busy. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. Can I cook dinner for my wife without there being a crisis?" "You could, but you don't, so what's wrong?" He plated pasta, poured wine, sat down across from her. "I've been thinking about your father, about the letter he left you." "What about it?" "About what he said. That power is only worth having if you're willing to use it. I think he was wrong." "Yeah?" "Power is only worth having if you use it for something that matters. Otherwise, you're just my father, just Vincent, building empires and missing the life that happens around them." "What matters to you?" "This, you. The life we're building that's about more than territory and profit. I don't want to end up like Vincent, powerful and alone, leaving letters instead of having conversations." Lena reached across the table, took his hand. "You won't. We won't. Because we're choosing different. Every single day, we're choosing different." "You promise?" "I promise." They ate dinner, talked about nothing important, went to bed early because tomorrow would bring new problems, new challenges, new choices to make. But tonight was just them, choosing each other, choosing this life, choosing to build something that balanced power with partnership. And in the morning, when Lena woke up beside Dante in their apartment overlooking the city she'd claimed as hers, she thought about the woman who'd baked an anniversary cake for a man who didn't love her, about how far she'd traveled from that kitchen, that marriage, that version of herself. She'd lost 7 years to someone who didn't see her, but she'd gained something more valuable, herself. Not the girl who'd run away from obligation, not the wife who'd swallowed insults, but the woman who'd learned that strength and fairness could coexist. That power was something you built, not something you begged for. That the right partnership didn't diminish you. It amplified everything you already were. Adrien had taught her what she didn't want. Dante had taught her what was possible, but the most important lesson had come from herself. That you could survive betrayal, rebuild from nothing, and become someone stronger than you'd ever imagined. That was worth more than any revenge, any empire, any carefully orchestrated downfall of the man who'd underestimated her. She thought coming back was about showing Adrien what he'd lost. Turned out it was about showing herself what she'd always had, the capacity to choose her own future instead of accepting the one handed to her. And she'd chosen well.